Chapter 23-24. Stop! Yi Xian suddenly stood up with a solemn expression. The woman was given a fright, and her clothes that had already been untied slid down. Of course, there were still clothes underneath. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Put on your clothes. The woman hesitated for a moment before saying, no. Yi Xian was speechless. The woman wanted to continue delaying, but a strand of sword intent locked onto her. The woman raised her head to look at Yi Xian and said with a trembling voice, "You?" Yi Xian waved his sleeve, and the woman's clothes were all put on. In the next moment, the woman was blasted out of the door. Outside the door, the woman was stunned. Yi Xian looked at the woman outside with a cold expression. Am I very easy to talk to? Hearing this, the woman was shocked and hurriedly shook her head. Yi Xian looked at the woman coldly. If a woman doesn't have self-respect, how can others respect her? I don't care what your reasons are, but I hate your behavior. Every time you encounter trouble, you sell yourself and use your body to exchange for benefits. He shook his head slightly. I don't want to say anything too hurtful, but do you think that your behavior is appropriate? The woman lowered her head slightly. Yi Xian suddenly asked, what do you want to exchange with me? The woman fell silent. Speak. Yi Xian suddenly shouted. His voice was like thunder, and it was terrifying. The woman's heart shook and she hurriedly said, cultivation resources. Yi Xian frowned slightly. For cultivation resources? The woman nodded and said with a trembling voice, yes. At this moment, some people rushed over. Seeing this, the woman's face instantly turned pale. If others found out about this, she would lose all face. At this moment, Yi Xian waved his sleeve. Boom! A strand of sword intent surged out, and in an instant, the people who rushed over were blasted back. Seeing this, the woman looked up at Yi Xian with a dazed expression. Yi Xian looked at the woman and did not speak. The woman said with a trembling voice, You look down on me, right? Yi Xian shook his head. I'm just angry. When he found out that this woman wanted to use her body to exchange for resources, he did not look down on her. Instead, he felt more anger and sorrow. How difficult would it be for a nobody without a backer to change his fate? When the normal path couldn't satisfy them, many people would try to take the crooked path. Most of the time, the crooked path was always easier than the right path, especially for women. If they made the wrong choice, money might not be that hard to earn for them. He didn't want to criticize these people, but this was wrong. Being poor was not a reason for you to make mistakes. Because once you took a wrong step, every step you took would be wrong, and then you would step into the bottomless abyss. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Do you want to study? The woman was stunned. Read books? Yi Xian nodded. Reading can change one's fate. The woman hesitated. Yi Xian smiled faintly. He opened his palm, and a divine path code slowly floated in front of the woman. The woman took it and had a look. In the next moment, her pupils suddenly constricted. In an instant, she knelt down and said in a trembling voice, Thank you, thank you. A gentle sword intent suddenly lifted the woman up. Yi Xian smiled. Are you willing to study? The woman took a deep breath. She hugged the divine Tao code tightly with both hands and said firmly, Yes. Yi Xian nodded. He opened his palm, and a small wooden token appeared in front of the woman. On the wooden token, there were 2 words engraved, Guanxian. Yi Xian smiled. From now on, you are a member of my Guanxian Academy. The woman bowed deeply. Greetings, Dean. Yi Xian walked in front of the woman. He took out a handkerchief and handed it to the woman. I'm not preaching, but in the future, you have to love yourself. If you don't love yourself, how can others love you? The woman took the handkerchief. She lowered her head slightly. Okay. Yi Xian smiled and turned to leave. At this moment, the woman suddenly raised her head. Why are you so good to me? Yi Xian stopped. After a moment of silence, he said, I have a wish. To establish a heart for the universe, to establish a life for all living beings, to pass on the lost knowledge for the past sages, and to establish peace for all ages. As he spoke, he shook his head and laughed self-deprecatingly. But before this, I've always been accepting geniuses with great talent. I've never thought about those ordinary people. Those geniuses with great talent will be welcomed and valued by the sects wherever they go. But what about those ordinary people with poor talent? Just like you, everyone values geniuses and geniuses. What about those ordinary people? As he said this, he turned to look at the woman and smiled. From now on, my academy will not set any threshold. We will no longer measure any student based on talent. Anyone who wants to learn will be welcomed by my academy. I may not be able to be absolutely fair, but I'm willing to give these ordinary people a platform and a chance. I'll let them have a chance to stand out like those geniuses. With that, he turned to leave. At this moment, a sword hum suddenly soared into the sky from his body. In the next moment, a terrifying sword intent soared into the sky. Boom! In an instant, the entire starry sky boiled and gradually disappeared. The sword intense aura grew stronger and stronger. Gradually, it erupted like a volcano, unleashing an extremely terrifying power. In an instant, the entire starry sky above the Xingu clan was wiped out. Under the shroud of the sword intent, the countless experts of the Xingu clan were terrified. Demigod. It was not the human who had reached the demigod realm, but the human world sword intent that had reached the demigod realm. Below, Yixian raised his head and looked at the pitch-black sky above him. After a moment of silence, he said softly, "An unintentional willow grows shade." After he finished speaking, he walked towards the room. At this moment, the terrifying sword intent suddenly disappeared without a trace, as though it had never appeared. Behind Yixian, the woman was stunned for a moment before she said softly, "My name is Gu Ran." Gu Ran. Yixian did not know that his small act of giving out a book would create such a terrifying existence. Gu Ran. Guanxian Academy was second only to the Qing Qiu Empress. In Guanxian Academy, she founded the Kindness Academy and was the first Kindness Academy master. She did good deeds all her life and achieved great success in the path of kindness. Her students were all over the universe. After that, she spent her entire life searching for the first dean of Guanxian Academy, Yixian. On the other side, the clan leader looked at the room Yixian was in and remained silent. She had already arrived when Yixian first used his sword intent to chase away the experts of the Xingu clan. She had heard the entire conversation between Yixian and Gu Ran clearly. She had also seen it when Yixian's sword intent reached the demigod level. Yixian's words shocked her. To establish a heart for the universe, to establish a life for all living beings, to continue learning for the past sages, and to establish peace for all ages, the woman was truly shocked. She could not imagine that the man before her would have such great ambitions. The most frightening thing was that this man's sword intent had reached the demigod level. She was also a genius. She had spent tens of thousands of years to reach the demigod level from the see-through realm, but this man before her had so easily made her sword intent reach the demigod level. This was a little ridiculous. Of course, this was not the main point. The main point was this man's way of doing things. She had seen the Divine Way Codex before. It could be said that it was a priceless divine book, but Yixian had given it away just like that. Not even blinking an eye? Was he that generous? The woman was silent for a long time before she turned and left. Because Yixian's sword intent breakthrough had caused a huge commotion, many outside forces had rushed to the ancient god world to inquire about it. However, the clan leader had blocked all news and chased away everyone outside. This also made many forces even more curious, especially the Imperial Wilderness Celestial Clan. Imperial Wilderness Celestial Clan. On a mountain peak somewhere, Di Zhuang sat cross-legged on the ground. There were 2 spears stabbed into the ground on either side of her, and a white-robed elder stood beside her. At this moment, Di Zhuang opened her eyes. Demigod-level sword intent? The white-robed elder nodded. Confirmed. The corner of Di Zhuang's mouth lifted slightly. Not bad. The white-robed elder said in a deep voice, "Don't underestimate him." Di Zhuang nodded. Understood. With that, she slowly closed her eyes. The white-robed elder quietly retreated. He came to a river where an old man was fishing with his legs crossed. The white-robed elder came to the old man's side and bowed slightly. Clan leader. This old man who was fishing was Di Yuan of the Imperial Wilderness Celestial Clan. Di Yuan chuckled. That young man's sword intent has reached the demigod level? The white-robed elder nodded. Confirmed. Di Yuan smiled slightly. Interesting. The white-robed elder wanted to say something but stopped. Di Yuan said softly, that woman actually found such a genius. This is something I never expected. The white-robed elder said in a deep voice, this person comes from the universe of gods and is the dean of an academy. Guanxian Academy is a very ordinary academy. As for this person, his origin is quite mysterious. With that said, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. No matter what, this person is helping the Xingu clan, which means he's our enemy. Since he's our enemy, we can send someone to Guanxian Academy. Di Yuan frowned. You cultivate every day. Can't you cultivate your brain a little? The white-robed elder was stunned. Di Yuan said indifferently, this person is so monstrous. How can he be an ordinary person? If we go against his academy, isn't that what that woman wants? If we go against him now, it's equivalent to having another enemy for no reason. Moreover, it's an unknown enemy. Understand? The white-robed elder said in a deep voice. Then he's helping the Xingu clan. Di Yuan shook his head. Our top priority now is to find out why he's helping the Xingu clan. Is it voluntary or forced? If it's voluntary, there must be a reason. If it's forced? With that said, the corners of his mouth curled up like an old fox. Then won't our chance come? The white-robed elder frowned. Rope him in? Di Yuan smiled. It's not impossible. The white-robed elder was silent for a moment before saying, I'll continue investigating. Di Yuan shook his head. No need. The white-robed elder was stunned. Di Yuan said indifferently, I'll investigate it myself. With that said, he stood up and left. But soon he stopped and turned around. That young man likes to read? The white-robed elder nodded. Every day, he doesn't leave his hands. The white-robed elder pondered for a moment before saying, Go and collect all the ancient books of the Imperial Wilderness God clan. With that said, he smiled. Those who are lustful will send beauties. Those who like to read will send books. It's not important whether we can rope him in or not. What's important is to show our goodwill. The white-robed elder hesitated for a moment before saying, Clan leader, is there a need for us to treat a young man like this? Shut up. Di Yuan suddenly said angrily. Do you know how long it took me to reach demigod from the see-through realm? 12,000 years. And look at that young man. Damn it, he can reach demigod sword intent at such a young age. This kind of person is a talent. In this era, what's the most important thing? Talent. The white-robed elder said in a deep voice. We have the Emperor's makeup. Di Yuan said indifferently. We do have the Emperor's makeup. But have you ever thought about what if the Emperor's makeup falls in love with this young man? With that said, he suddenly smirked. That's 1 + 1 = 2. 2 super geniuses. If they give birth to a child, it'll be 3 geniuses. If they give birth to 2 children, it'll be 4 geniuses. Hee, the elder. P.S. My throat has been very uncomfortable recently. Chapter 23-25. Seeing that his clan leader had fallen into a beautiful fantasy, the old man hurriedly said, Clan leader, Di Zhuang's feelings. I'm afraid we can't control them. Di Yuan said indifferently, Of course I know. But we can help. For example, if we form a good relationship with that young man, it will be equivalent to creating an opportunity for them. If we become enemies with that young man, then she and that young man won't have any chance. As he said that, he sighed softly. As an elder, we must consider the next generation when we do things. Most of the time, you can't be too extreme. If you are too extreme, the next generation will have no room for reconciliation. With that, he turned and left. The old man was speechless. At the Xingu clan, Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the room with his eyes closed. In front of him was a sword. It wasn't the sword that his father had given him, but a sword that he had condensed from sword intent. Sword intent breakthrough. This was something he hadn't expected. Moreover, This sword intent had reached the level of a demigod. It had to be said that this was very surprising. Yi Xian opened his palm and the sword condensed from sword intent fell into his palm. He slowly closed his eyes. Feel the sword intent. Yi Xian felt the power of the human world in this sword intent. Before this, he didn't know how to improve the sword intent and power of the human world. But now, he understood a little. The transformation of the heart. Every time his state of mind transformed, the sword intent and the power of the human world would be improved. Of course, what he said to Gu Ran earlier wasn't for a breakthrough, but because he really felt it. His academy should be bigger in scope, and it should do something for more ordinary people. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked at the sword in his hand. Not to mention anything else, he wanted to find Di Zhuang and fight. To fight to his heart's content. At this moment, the Xingu clan's clan leaders suddenly appeared in the room. Yi Xian was slightly taken aback. Then he said, "Don't you knock first before entering the room?" The clan leader looked at Yi Xian. "It's time for your class." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Class?" The female chief said calmly, 5 million universe veins, half a month, is it just for one lesson? Yi Xian was speechless. The clan leader then said, "Go to class." Yi Xian smiled. "Have Gu Xian and the others changed since last time?" The patriarch nodded. He no longer shows off his abilities, becoming much more low-key and calm. Yi Xian smiled and said, "That's enough." The matriarch looked at Yi Xian. "You can continue your lecture. Especially that divine Dao code that you showed me before. Tell me about this book." Yi Xian shook his head. "I'm not interested." With that, he got up and walked outside. The woman suddenly said, "Don't you want 5 million universe veins?" Yi Xian waved his hand. "Do as you wish." With that, he disappeared into the distance. The woman frowned. Yi Xian arrived at the martial arts practice field. At this moment, the barrier had been restored, and there were over 100 Xingu clan disciples here. These disciples were cultivating, but when they saw Yi Xian, they all stood up. They were still afraid of Yi Xian. This fellow had almost killed Gu Xian in the past. Yi Xian glanced at the Xingu clan disciples and smiled. "All of you continue cultivating. I want to try out the sword I just comprehended." Everyone looked at Yi Xian and didn't dare to speak. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. In the next moment, hundreds of swords condensed from sword intent appeared around him. Sensing this sword intent, the Xingu clan disciples' expressions changed drastically. The might of this sword intent seemed to want to crush them. It was extremely shocking. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the hundreds of swords suddenly transformed into rays of sword light that fell into his palm. In the blink of an eye, he slashed with his sword. As soon as he slashed with his sword, Yi Xian immediately sheathed his sword, and then he turned around and left. On the other hand, the entire martial arts practice field behind Yi Xian was gradually being obliterated. The Xingu clan disciples retreated swiftly and left the martial arts practice field. At this moment, the entire martial arts practice field had been completely obliterated. Everyone was slightly dazed. They turned to look at Yi Xian, who was in the distance. Yi Xian walked towards the distance with his sword in hand. He walked very slowly and calmly, and his clothes fluttered even though there was no wind. A Xingu clan disciple suddenly spoke in a trembling voice. "Did he just come here to put on a show?" All the others were speechless. On the other side, Yi Xian was stopped by the patriarch, and she gazed at Yi Xian. "You destroyed the martial arts practice field." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "I didn't do it on purpose." She gazed at Yi Xian for a short while before she said, "I'll take you somewhere." Yi Xian was slightly curious. "Where?" She replied, "The immortal treasure world." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "The immortal treasure world?" She nodded. "It's a world established by the pavilion master of the immortal treasure pavilion, Qingguan, and it's extremely prosperous. I'm going there to bid for something. Come with me." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Can I not go?" She looked at Yi Xian. "No?" Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. "Why not?" She spoke indifferently. "If I'm not here, then no one in my clan can do anything to you. I'm afraid you'll act recklessly. As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand and vanished with Yi Xian on the spot. Yi Xian, actually, she was indeed slightly afraid of Yi Xian. If she wasn't here, then who could do anything to Yi Xian? No one. Moreover, she realized that this fellow was quite scheming. If no one restrained him, then who knew what he would do to the Xingu clan when she returned? It was better to take him away. Immortal Treasure Pavilion. On this day, Diyuan came to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion to inquire about Yi Xian. The best place to do so was naturally the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, not only because the Celestial Treasure Pavilion had a powerful intelligence system, but also because Yi Xian was a super VIP of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. In the room, President Su Tian received Diyuan. Diyuan smiled. Brother Su, I'll get straight to the point. I want all the information on young Master Yi. Su Tian smiled faintly. No. Diyuan frowned. Why? Su Tian chuckled. I have no right to reveal young Master Ye's background to you. Hearing that, Diyuan narrowed his eyes. What background? Su Tian suddenly raised his thumb and index finger, and then he rubbed them lightly. 10 million universe veins. Diyuan's face instantly sank. Brother Su, it hurts our relationship to talk about money. Su Tian smiled lightly. Brother Di, I'm a businessman and blood brothers should be fair. Diyuan smiled. That's true. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a spatial ring flew over to Su Tian. Su Tian grinned as he put the spatial ring away, and then he said, He's the pavilion master's friend. Diyuan said, Continue. Su Tian blinked. You're done. Diyuan stared at Su Tian. Brother Su, you're going a bit too far. Su Tian smiled bitterly. Brother Di, it's not that I'm greedy, but I don't dare tell you about his true background. It's too terrifying and I don't want to be tainted by it. Diyuan frowned slightly. You don't dare to tell me? Su Tian nodded. Diyuan suddenly withdrew a spatial ring and placed it in front of Su Tian, and there were 20 million universe veins within it. Su Tian grabbed the spatial ring and said, The Yang clan. Diyuan spoke in a low voice. I've never heard of it. Su Tian glanced at Diyuan and said, It's a terrifying power that exceeds our understanding, and he's the young master of the Yang clan. As he spoke, he turned to look outside and said softly, Brother Di, this world is very, very big. Not to mention that we are just demigods, even a real ancient god, or even an ancient god, is just an ant in the eyes of some people. Diyuan remained silent for a short moment, and then he smiled. Brother Su, thank you. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and was about to leave. However, he seemed to have thought of something and he said, Brother Su, you have to come to my wedding. Su Tian frowned slightly. What wedding? Diyuan smiled. To tell you the truth, after my daughter went to the Xingu clan to spar with young Master Yi, the two of them actually came to appreciate each other. In the end, they actually went from appreciating each other to loving each other. The reason I came to inquire about young Master Yi was because I wanted to find out more about my future son-in-law. In short, you have to come to my wedding. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Su Tian was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, Brother Di, is what you said true? Diyuan was slightly displeased. Can I speak carelessly about my daughter's reputation? As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and continued walking, but he didn't fly. Su Tian suddenly grabbed Diyuan, and then he placed the two spatial rings he just obtained into Diyuan's hand. Brother Di, little brother was only joking with you just now. You're right, talking about money hurts our relationship. Diyuan said in a deep voice, Brother Su, I know that you are doing business. I can understand. Don't worry. Today, you will receive my 30 million universe meridians. This matter will be known by the heavens, the earth, you, and I. I will definitely not tell my future son-in-law about this. Su Tian hurriedly shook his head, and then he forcefully placed the two spatial rings into Diyuan's hand. Brother Di, I can't accept this money. Am I still human if I accept my brother's money? After the two of them refused for a while, Diyuan finally took the spatial rings and left. After Diyuan left, an old man appeared behind Su Tian, and the old man said in a low voice, President, you can't fully believe this old fellow's words. Su Tian's expression was calm. Of course I know. But I can't fucking gamble with him, because from what I know, this young Master Yi is indeed a bit of a playboy. As for him and this Di Zhuang, what if that girl and young Master Yi are really together? If I accept this old fellow's money, won't my path be narrow? Old man? In the space-time tunnel, Yi Xian and the clan leader's woman walked side by side. The clan leader's woman wore a black dress today, and her long hair casually draped behind her. Her face didn't have any traces of makeup, and it was very clean, just a bit cold. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Can you talk about this immortal treasure world?" The clan leader nodded slightly. "You know Qin Guan, right?" Yi Xian nodded. The clan leader turned her head and looked at Yi Xian. "This immortal treasure world has a college called Wuxia College. Don't you like to study? From what I know, this college also does learning. You can exchange some ideas when the time comes." Wuxia College. Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Then I'll definitely pay a visit." Chapter 23-26. Immortal Treasure World. After entering the Immortal Treasure Realm, Yi Xian immediately discovered many spaceships. These spaceships came from all directions. Many of them flew up from the city below and then flew in all directions. Yi Xian looked down and saw a huge city in the depths of the starry sky. Immortal Treasure City. This Immortal Treasure City is the biggest city in the Immortal Treasure World, and it is also the only city. One world, one city. Yi Xian is curious about this Immortal Treasure City. This was built by Qin Guan. He knows that Qin Guan's way of thinking is different from other women. What would the city she built look like? Yi Xian smiled. "Patriarch, let's go down." The woman suddenly said, "My name is Gu Han." However, Yi Xian has already disappeared into the distance, as if he didn't hear it. The woman glanced at Yi Xian in the distance and then disappeared. Immortal Treasure City. Yi Xian came to the entrance of Immortal Treasure City. At the entrance, there is a stone platform with a box on it. At this moment, there are many people gathered around this stone platform. Yi Xian is curious and immediately walked over. He came to the stone platform and saw the box on it. There is nothing special about it, it looks like an ordinary box. At this moment, some people suddenly turned their heads and saw the patriarch slowly walking over. When she walked over, the people's expressions changed. Then, they quickly retreated and made way for her. Pressure. This woman only released a bit of pressure, but this pressure isn't something ordinary people can bear. The patriarch walked to Yi Xian's side. Yi Xian smiled. "You don't like standing in the crowd?" The patriarch's expression was calm. "I don't like people being so close to me." Then she looked at the box. This was left by Pavilion Master Qin. He said that he left it for the fated person. As long as you can match the token, this box can be opened. Yi Xian turned his head and saw a sentence beside the iron box. "Heavenly King covers Earthly Tiger." The Heavenly King overpowers the Earthly Tiger? Yi Xian frowned. What kind of password was this? The woman said softly, "This box is rather mysterious. Divine senses cannot penetrate it." Yi Xian glanced at the box and scanned it with his divine sense. However, just like what the clan leader said, he couldn't penetrate it. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. This Qin Guan likes to do these fancy things. Gu Han glanced at Yi Xian. "Are you close to her?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Gu Han fell silent. Yi Xian glanced at the box and said with a smile, "I wonder whose hands this box will fall into in the future." With that, he looked at Gu Han. "Let's enter the city." Gu Han nodded, and the two of them walked into the city. After entering the city, Yi Xian discovered that the city was extraordinarily prosperous. The wide streets were filled with people, and most of them were cultivators. Gu Han suddenly said, "These people came from all over the universe to do business here." Yi Xian looked at Gu Han. "Business?" Gu Han nodded. This celestial treasure city is equivalent to a transit station. It circulates all kinds of goods from all over the universe. It can be said that as long as you have money, you can buy anything. As long as you have good goods, you can basically sell them here. Yi Xian was a little curious. These people came here to do business. They will pay taxes, right? Gu Han nodded slightly. Anyone who comes to do business in this city has to pay 1% tax to Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Yi Xian said softly, "It's not much." Gu Han nodded. "It's indeed not much. However, even so, this Celestial Treasure Pavilion still earns a lot of money. Previously, someone estimated that this Celestial Treasure Pavilion earns tens of millions of universe veins just from taxes alone. Not to mention they have other projects." Yi Xian was a little curious. Other projects? Gu Han looked at the tall buildings around them. All the buildings in this city belong to Pavilion Master Qin. Anyone who wants to do business here has to pay rent to Celestial Treasure Pavilion every month. Yi Xian's expression froze. All the businesses in this city belong to Qin Guan. How much rent does it cost every month? He didn't dare to think about it. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. Qin Guan, a rich woman. Gu Han said again. "There's a good thing about this place. You can't use force here. No one can use force here." Yi Xian looked at Gu Han. "Even you can't?" Gu Han looked at Yi Xian. "There are at least 3 Ancient God Realm experts here. There are even Ancient God Realm experts. No one dares to use force here unless they really don't want to live." She paused for a while before continuing. "Do you understand what I mean?" Yi Xian smiled. "I'm a scholar. A scholar doesn't fight." He walked away after saying that. Gu Han glanced at Yi Xian before following. Along the way, Yi Xian looked around with interest. He had to admit that this city was very earthly, with the smell of smoke and fire. A while later, Gu Han brought Yi Xian to a tall building. Yi Xian looked up. Immortal Treasure Tower. Obviously, this was the property of Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Gu Han said, "This place is suitable for cultivation. Every room is an independent starry sky world. It's very quiet. Of course, it's a little expensive. One night requires more than 1,000 universe veins. And this is the cheapest. The most expensive room requires 100,000 universe veins." 100,000 universe veins. Yi Xian looked at the tall building in front of him and sighed inwardly. "Qin Guan, how much money do you have?" In this world, there were 2 mysteries. First, how strong was Qin? Second, how much money did Qin Guan have? One was that he was invincible. The other was that he wasn't interested in money. Yi Xian sighed inwardly. "When would I be able to show off like Qin and Qin Guan?" Gu Han suddenly said, "Let's go in." Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and nodded. The 2 of them had just entered the Immortal Treasure Tower when a pretty woman came over to greet them. She smiled. "Are you looking for a place to stay?" Gu Han nodded. 2 ordinary rooms. After saying that, she opened her palm and a spatial ring flew in front of her. There were 20,000 universe veins in the spatial ring. "The cheapest?" Yi Xian blinked and said, "Patriarch, are you that thrifty?" Gu Han glanced at Yi Xian. "The family's wealth can't be squandered." Yi Xian gave a thumbs up. "Amazing!" As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a command token appeared in front of the woman. "Do you recognize this?" The woman's expression changed drastically when she saw this, and she immediately bowed deeply to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian was slightly curious. "You know me?" The woman hurriedly said, "Up until now, the Pavilion Master has only issued a mysterious heaven token, and the owner of this mysterious heaven token is young Master Yi, Yi Xian." Yi Xian grinned. "Don't be so nervous. What I mean is, are there any discounts when we stay here?" The woman laughed bitterly. "It's free. Young Master Yi's stay here is free of charge." Yi Xian blinked. "Free of charge?" The woman nodded. "Both of you can stay in the Supreme Room." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Supreme Room?" Gu Han suddenly said, 200,000 universe veins per night. 200,000. Yi Xian's expression froze, and he looked at Gu Han. Are there really people who stay in such expensive rooms? Even though he could be considered to be rich, he wasn't willing to spend 200,000 universe veins for a night. When she heard Yi Xian, the woman suddenly said, "Yes, and a lot." Yi Xian said in a low voice. Are they really that rich? The woman hesitated for a moment before she said, yes. Yi Xian was speechless. The woman bowed slightly. Young Master Yi, follow me. As soon as she finished speaking, she led Yi Xian and Gu Han up the stairs. They directly arrived at the second last floor. As soon as Yi Xian opened the door to his room, a boundless starry sky entered his eyes. Yi Xian was slightly shocked. This wasn't an illusion, it was a real starry sky. However, this starry sky was connected to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. The spirit energy in this starry sky was terrifyingly dense, and it was practically material. Moreover, there were some special formations in the surroundings. These formations were like barriers, and they were countless times stronger than the barriers in the Xingu clan's practice grounds. Meanwhile, the woman hesitated for a moment before she said, Young Master Yi, do you need any special services? Yi Xian turned around to look at the woman. Special services? The woman nodded. Yi Xian was slightly curious. What special services? The woman hesitated for a moment, and then she clapped her hands. In next to no time, a woman walked in slowly. The woman was tall and had a peerlessly beautiful appearance. She wore very little, and some parts of her body were faintly visible. It was truly alluring. Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. How could Qingguan do that? Do such a thing? The woman's expression changed drastically, and she hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, you've misunderstood. Yi Xian was slightly angry. Misunderstood? What have I misunderstood? The woman explained, They are only here to add to the fun, and then they will listen to your orders. They won't do anything else. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Won't do anything else? Then she's wearing so little. Is she trying to tempt the customers here? The woman smiled bitterly. Young Master Yi, they are willing. Look at their realms. Yi Xian turned around to look at the woman. Her realm was very low. The woman spoke in a low voice. They are extremely lacking in talent. If they were outside, their fates would be very tragic. The pavilion master allowed them to make a living here, and they are under the protection of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. They only do some service work. As she spoke, she looked at the woman. The reason she's wearing so little is because she's a dancer, and she's skilled in dancing. There's no other reason. Moreover, under normal circumstances, she only serves female customers. This time, I allowed her to come because it's you, young Master Yi. Yi Xian glanced at the woman. He discovered that she was indeed a virgin. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Is what you said true? The woman nodded quickly. How could this subordinate dare to deceive young Master Yi? The pavilion master once said that there are many ordinary women in this world. They are not talented, and those sects don't accept them. If they aren't strong enough, it's extremely dangerous outside. Thus, she asked us to take these women in and help them make a living, so that ordinary people like them can have a chance to make a name for themselves. As she spoke, she paused, lowered her head slightly, and said softly, I'm also one of these women. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. I'm sorry. I didn't investigate clearly before getting angry. It's my fault. The woman quickly shook her head. No. I didn't explain it clearly to young Master Yi. Yi Xian turned his head to look at the dancer in the distance. The woman was also looking at him. She was very calm from beginning to end. The woman suddenly said, Young Master Yi, if you don't like her, then I'll take her away. After that, she looked at the beautiful woman. Xiangrong, let's go. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, Let her stay. The woman was stunned. Then she nodded. Okay. After that, she glanced at the woman named Xiangrong. Her eyes flashed with worry, but she didn't say anything and retreated. In the starry sky, only Yi Xian and Xiangrong were left. Xiangrong suddenly said, You won't blame her, right? Yi Xian smiled. You're afraid that I'll blame her? Xiangrong nodded. She's my good sister. Originally, she never asked me to receive male customers, but this time, she asked me to come, because she said that you're a very, very distinguished guest, and if I entertain you well, I'll give you a chance. If I take good care of you, I might have a chance to change your fate. Yi Xian was silent. Xiang Rong suddenly smiled. Young master, what's the special service you mentioned? Can you tell me? Yi Xian. P.S. By the way, am I the most punctual in updating? And the most stable? Chapter 23-27. Special Service. Yi Xian blushed with shame. His thoughts were a bit impure. Xiang Rong said again, Young Master Yi, do you want to watch me dance? I only need 100 universe veins each time. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and smiled slightly. No need, you can go down. Xiang Rong didn't go down. She slowly walked in front of Yi Xian and then looked directly at Yi Xian. Young master, I know what special service you are talking about. If you need it, I can provide special service. Yi Xian's expression froze. Xiang Rong began to take off her clothes. But at this moment, a sword intent suddenly shrouded her. Xiang Rong looked up at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled slightly. Why? Xiang Rong was silent. Yi Xian looked at Xiang Rong and asked again, Why? Xiang Rong was silent for a long time before saying, Women have to have a home after all. In that case, why don't I find a better home? With that, she looked at Yi Xian. You are gentle and elegant, handsome, and very strong. I think you are very good. What a sin. Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. He patted his face. It was really dangerous for a boy to go out, especially someone like him. It was too dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he would be targeted by a woman. Too scary. Yi Xian looked at Xiang Rong. Go down. Xiang Rong glanced at Yi Xian and didn't dare to say anything more. She bowed slightly and then retreated. In the starry sky, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Pure? None of these women were pure. Just like Xiang Rong, she had been waiting for a suitable opportunity to sell herself to others. But she didn't know that only by being excellent could she be worthy of a better man. Otherwise, if the gap between the two sides was too big, she would not have any weight in other people's hearts. The idea of relying on a rich man was not good. Yi Xian didn't care about this Xiang Rong. Qin Guan had already given her a chance. As for how she used it, that was her business. Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled slightly. He had to say that he and Qin Guan had the same ideas. At this moment, a pretty woman suddenly appeared not far behind Yi Xian. She respectfully bowed. Young Master Yi, Immortal Treasure Pavilion's President Xiaolan requests an audience. Yi Xian frowned. Immortal Treasure Pavilion's president? The Immortal Treasure Pavilion of Immortal Treasure Realm? The Immortal Treasure Pavilion of Immortal Realm? Yi Xian nodded slightly. Let him in. The delicate-looking woman bowed deeply. At that moment, her heart was in extreme shock. The president of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion was requesting an audience. Xiaolan. Yi Xian might not know the status of the president of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion in the Immortal Treasure Realm, but he knew that if Xiaolan stomped his foot, the entire Immortal Treasure Realm would be shaken. Someone with real power. In the Immortal Treasure Realm, he was like an emperor. Countless forces wanted to curry favor with him. And now, this president actually came to see Yi Xian. The pretty woman was a little confused. Obviously, Yi Xian was not just a simple super VIP. After the delicate and pretty woman left, a middle-aged man appeared behind Yi Xian. The middle-aged man was dressed in a luxurious brocade robe. When he stepped into the starry sky, the entire starry sky trembled slightly, but returned to normal in the blink of an eye. Ancient God. This was a genuine ancient god. Through Daoist, Yi Xian was able to sense Daoist's true realm. Xiaolan looked at Yi Xian. Without any hesitation, he bowed slightly. Greetings, young Master Yi. Young Master Yi. Yi Xian turned to look at Xiaolan and said with a smile, This form of address of yours is a little interesting. Xiaolan smiled and said, It is my honor to meet the Yang clan. Yi Xian was curious. Who? Xiaolan smiled faintly. An elder. Yi Xian spread his hands. Except me. Besides my father, my sister, and a few other aunts, I don't know anyone else in the Yang clan. He knew that this young Master Yi in front of him was being left to fend for himself. Yi Xian smiled. Senior is an ancient god realm cultivator? Xiaolan smiled. I don't deserve the title senior. Young master, you can call me Xiaolan or President Xiao. Xiaolan smiled faintly. I don't deserve the title senior. Young master, you can call me Xiaolan or President Xiao. He paused for a moment before continuing. I am indeed an ancient god realm cultivator. Yi Xian was a little curious. I heard there are ancient gods in the city? Xiaolan nodded. There is one, an old monster from the Supreme Profound sect of the Supreme Profound World. He spends most of his time in the immortal treasure realm. Yi Xian pondered for a moment before looking at Xiaolan. Is there something you need from me? Xiaolan smiled. Nothing much, I just came to see young Master Yi. If young Master Yi needs anything in this world, please let me know. Yi Xian smiled. Many thanks. Xiaolan bowed slightly. Young Master Yi is too polite. Then I won't disturb young Master Yi any longer. Farewell. With that said, Xiaolan left quietly. At this time, Xiaolan suddenly stopped. Young Master Yi, is that Xingu clan patriarch Gu Han threatening young Master Yi? If so, does young Master Yi need me to deal with him now? Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. Forget it. I'll deal with this myself. Xiaolan nodded. Very well. He paused for a moment before asking, Young Master Yi, are you here for the auction in 5 days? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Xiaolan opened his palm and a dark golden invitation slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, this is the highest invitation. When you arrive, just show it to me. Yi Xian put away the invitation letter and said with a smile, Thank you. Xiaolan smiled. Young Master Yi is too polite. With that said, Xiaolan bowed slightly and left. After leaving, Xiaolan slowly walked to Gu Han's room and lightly knocked on the door. When the door opened, Gu Han appeared in front of Xiaolan. Xiaolan smiled. Patriarch Gu Han, I am Xiaolan, the president of Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Xiaolan. Gu Han was stunned. She naturally knew who Xiaolan was. He was a terrifying figure in the celestial treasure world. Moreover, he was a genuine ancient god. At this time, Xiaolan opened his palm and a dark golden invitation slowly floated in front of Gu Han. Patriarch Gu Han, this is the highest invitation. We welcome Patriarch Gu Han and young Master Yi to participate in the auction in 5 days. Hearing that, Gu Han was stunned. Xiaolan did not say anything else. He cupped his fists and turned to leave. Before coming here, he had investigated Gu Han and Yi Xian. He knew that Yi Xian was coerced by Gu Han, but now that he was here, he discovered that things were a little different from what he had imagined. When he asked Yi Xian if he wanted to deal with Gu Han, the truth was, he wanted to see Yi Xian's attitude. It was obvious that Yi Xian had no intention of killing Gu Han. This was a little interesting. Since Yi Xian had no intention of killing Gu Han, he naturally had to do things properly. What if Yi Xian and Gu Han were friends, or had some other relationship? Many a time, a small detail could determine one's success or failure. After Xiaolan left, Gu Han looked at the invitation in front of her in silence. This was the highest standard invitation from Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Only people with special status could receive it. In general, those who received this invitation were mostly ancient god realm masters. But now, the president of Celestial Treasure Pavilion personally sent her an invitation. Moreover, his attitude was so respectful. After all, she was only a demigod, whereas Xiaolan was an ancient god realm master. Yi Xian. Gu Han turned to look at Yi Xian's room in the distance, deep in thought. In the starry sky, Yi Xian collected his thoughts, sitting cross-legged on the ground. Cultivate. Stabilize. He needed to stabilize his cultivation as soon as possible. Only after stabilizing the profound insight realm could he study the ancient god realm. His goal was the ancient god realm, not the demigod realm. Other than stabilizing his cultivation, he was also practicing his one-sword void cleaving. Now, he no longer relied on the sword his father gave him, but his own sword intent. He discovered that the sword formed from the world sword intent was even more amazing. However, with his current soul, he could only condense several hundred of these swords in a short period of time. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. 3 days later, Yi Xian left his room. At the entrance of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sky. Today, the sky was calm and tranquil. He did not cultivate all the time, choosing to strike a balance between work and rest. Cultivating day and night was really boring. Today, he planned to pay a visit to the Wuxia Academy. He was very curious about the Wuxia Academy established by Qin Guan. Yi Xian asked for the location of the Wuxia Academy and got up to leave. At this time, Gu Han suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at Gu Han. Patriarch you? Gu Han's expression was calm. I'll go with you. Yi Xian smiled. Do you know where I'm going? Gu Han answered, Wuxia Academy. Yi Xian was slightly surprised, then smiled. Since you want to go, let's go together. He walked away after saying that. Gu Han glanced at Yi Xian, then followed. On the way, Yi Xian suddenly felt a little nervous. Gu Han looked at Yi Xian. What's wrong? Yi Xian smiled. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm afraid I'll be disappointed. Gu Han was puzzled. Disappointed about what? Yi Xian chuckled. I'm afraid that the academy is different from what I think it is. Gu Han was silent for a moment, then said, Pavilion Master Qin is an extraordinary person. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Let's go. Soon, the two of them arrived at the foot of a mountain. The mountain was called Wuxia Mountain. It wasn't big, and at the entrance of the mountain, there was a very simple sign. On it, there were 4 words, Wuxia Academy. Yi Xian looked up and saw hundreds of thatched huts on the top of the mountain in the distance. There was not a single luxurious building. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was stunned. This is Wuxia Academy? At this time, an old man walked from behind the two of them. This old man was wearing a very simple hemp robe and a pair of hemp shoes. He was also carrying a bundle of dry firewood on his back. When they saw this old man, Yi Xian and Gu Han's expressions changed. Ancient god. This ordinary-looking old man in front of them was actually an ancient god. At this time, the old man suddenly stopped. He looked at Yi Xian and smiled. You must be the young Master Yi that the pavilion master mentioned. Yi Xian nodded. That's right. The old man sized up Yi Xian and said with a smile, You have an extraordinary bearing. As he spoke, his gaze fell on the pen at Yi Xian's waist. Did Daoist? Yi Xian nodded. The old man smiled, retracted his gaze, then said, Young Master Yi, let's talk inside. Yi Xian was a little curious. Senior, you are? The old man smiled. Wen Xiu, the current deputy dean of Wuxia Academy. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, then smiled. To be honest, Wuxia Academy is different from what I expected. Wen Xiu smiled. The pavilion master said that for young people, material things can easily confuse their minds. Moreover, everyone is here to learn, not to enjoy. Therefore, all students of Wuxia Academy have to do everything personally, even cooking and washing clothes. They have to do it themselves, including me, the dean. Yi Xian frowned slightly. With your strength, washing clothes and cooking, Wen Xiu shook his head. In the academy, you can cultivate, but you can't use any of your strength to facilitate yourself. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Wen Xiu smiled. How can I change the world if I don't eat the suffering of the common people? Yi Xian was silent. Chapter 23-28. How could one change the human world and the universe if they didn't experience the sufferings of the mortal world? When he heard this, Yi Xian's heart was suddenly moved. Indeed, as he'd said before, if one wanted to change the world, one had to first enter the human world and experience the sufferings of the mortal world. Otherwise, how could one change the world? After entering the academy, Yi Xian realized that the students of the academy did everything themselves. Although they weren't weak, none of them used their own abilities to make things easier for themselves. Doing everything themselves. When Xiu started to light a fire and cook, he really was cooking. When Xiu looked at Yi Xian and smiled. The pavilion master said that the high and mighty immortals are unable to change the universe because they don't know the thoughts and needs of the people at the bottom. So, the students of the academy must go to the human world and experience the lives of those at the bottom. Only by knowing their sufferings and difficulties can we change them. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Indeed. When Xiu pointed at a straw hut in the distance. Young Master Yi, that straw hut contains all the ancient books collected by the Wuxia Academy. If you like, you can go in and take a look. Of course, you can't take it away. Yi Xian smiled. Is it open to everyone? When Xiu smiled. These ancient books are open to everyone. Of course, those cultivation methods and divine abilities are not open to the public. As he spoke, he shook his head. Actually, in my opinion, the ancient books in that hut are more important than those cultivation methods and divine abilities. Cultivation usually cultivates the heart, and reading is the best way to calm the heart and improve one's thinking. But many people tend to overlook this point and think that reading is useless. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm going to read. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and walked towards the straw hut. Gu Han was silent for a moment before he stood up and followed. When Xiu glanced at Yi Xian in the distance and remained silent. After entering the straw hut, Yi Xian noticed that the interior of the straw hut was a huge square. The square was filled with ancient books, and there were at least a few million of them. Yi Xian was instantly excited when he saw this. Obviously, these should have been collected by Qin Guan. In the following period of time, Yi Xian began to crazily read books. In fact, it was much easier for a cultivator to read books compared to an ordinary person. This was because a cultivator's memory was very heaven-defying. It was completely possible for them to have a photographic memory. However, many cultivators would not spend their time on things like reading books. After all, after stepping onto the path of cultivation, everyone's goal was either immortality or invincibility. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. Today was the day of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion's auction. After bidding farewell to Wen Xiu, Yi Xian left the Wuxia Academy with Gu Han. However, before he left, he copied the millions of ancient books. He had to bring them back to the Guanshen Academy. These books were extremely precious. If he brought them back, it would be of great help to the Guanshen Academy. Wen Xiu did not stop Yi Xian, because there were copies of these ancient books, and there were quite a few of them. On the way to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Yi Xian was extremely excited. The value of those books was immeasurable. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the side. Gu Han. Gu Han stopped and turned to look. Not far away, a beautiful woman slowly walked over with a young man. The beautiful woman wore a bright red dress with a very low neckline, revealing a large area of her ample bosom. Her face was like a hibiscus, and her eyes were like peach blossoms. She was extremely seductive. The man beside the beautiful woman was also extremely handsome. In terms of appearance, he didn't lose to Yi Xian at all. However, he was dressed very flirtatiously and even wore bright lipstick. Therefore, compared to Yi Xian, he was a little more seductive. On the other hand, Yi Xian was calm and had the elegant aura of a scholar. Seeing this beautiful woman, Gu Han frowned slightly. Madame Xiao. Madame Zhao's mouth twitched. She was extremely charming. Gu Han, you're still so cold. Speaking to there, she changed the topic and looked at Yi Xian with a slight smile. How should I address you, little brother? Yi Xian smiled and said, Yi Xian. Madame Xiao blinked. Yi Xian? Good name. As she spoke, she began to size up Yi Xian without any hesitation. Her gaze was like that of a hunter looking at his prey. Seeing Madame Zhao's gaze, the beautiful man turned to look at Yi Xian with a dark look in his eyes. Seeing Madame Zhao's fiery gaze, Yi Xian frowned slightly. He turned to look at Gu Han and said, You guys catch up, I'll be leaving first. After saying this, he turned and left. This Madame Xiao was clearly not a good woman. Of course, he was not interested in her private life, so he chose to leave. At this moment, the beautiful man beside Madame Xiao suddenly blocked in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian and said coldly, How unruly. You actually want to leave when your elders are talking. You're simply lacking in upbringing. You should. At this moment, Yi Xian's right hand suddenly grabbed his throat. Madame Xiao and Gu Han were both stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian looked at the beautiful man and said, Even my father didn't teach me how to do things. Who the hell do you think you are? After saying this, he slammed the man's throat onto the ground. Boom. Before everyone's eyes, the man's peerlessly beautiful face split open and blood splattered everywhere. Everyone was stunned. At this moment, Madame Zhao's expression suddenly turned cold. She looked at Gu Han and said coldly, "Gu Han, you have to look at the owner before you hit a dog." Gu Han said indifferently, "Then hit him. I didn't stop you." Madame Zhao was stunned, then she laughed out of anger. "Good, very good." Saying this, she directly looked at Yi Xian in the distance. "Young man, so vicious and merciless, you..." Yi Xian suddenly interrupted the beautiful woman's words. "Is he your gigolo?" The beautiful woman was stunned. The surrounding crowd was also stunned. So direct? The beautiful woman stared at Yi Xian, her gaze like a sword. Yi Xian pointed at the beautiful man at his feet. "Why does he dare to target me? Obviously you spoil him. Come to think of it, he usually relies on you to act like a tyrant. But I'm not his father, why should I spoil him?" At this moment, the beautiful man at Yi Xian's feet suddenly said fiercely, "Kill me if you have the guts. Kill me." Madame Zhao suddenly said, "Try and touch him." Before everyone's eyes, Yi Xian suddenly stomped his right foot. Boom. The beautiful man's head exploded into pieces, and his soul was obliterated. Everyone in the surroundings gasped when they witnessed this scene. He actually killed someone in Celestial Treasure City? Madame Zhao suddenly chuckled. "Interesting, truly interesting." As she spoke, she shook her head slightly. "I thought you were a different kind of man, but now it would seem like you're an idiot as well. All I had to do was provoke you slightly, and you really killed someone." When she spoke up to this point, she grinned. "This is Celestial Treasure City." Celestial Treasure City. Everyone present looked at Yi Xian and shook their heads secretly when they heard him. Obviously, killing someone in Celestial Treasure City was extremely stupid, because killing someone here was equivalent to going against the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Right at this moment, two formidable auras suddenly appeared in the distance. Demigods. The beautiful woman's smile grew brighter when she witnessed this scene. "Idiot, pay a heavy price for your stupid actions." Meanwhile, two old men appeared here, and they were the two demigods from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. In the surroundings, under everyone's gaze, the two old men slowly walked up to Yi Xian. Just when everyone thought the two old men were going to attack Yi Xian, the two old men actually bowed deeply to Yi Xian. The leading old man said respectfully, "Young Master Yi." Young Master Yi? Everyone here was stunned. Madame Zhao was stunned on the spot. The old man in the lead bowed respectfully to Yi Xian again. "Young Master Yi, please forgive us for being late." Everyone was speechless. Yi Xian glanced at Madame Zhao and ignored her. He was about to leave when Madame Zhao suddenly spoke fiercely, "Unfair. Unfair." The old man in the lead frowned when he heard this. Madame Zhao stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "The Celestial Treasure Pavilion is unfair. I refuse to accept this." As she spoke, she pointed at Yi Xian furiously. "He killed someone in Celestial Treasure City. According to the rules of Celestial Treasure City, he should be killed and hung on the city walls." The old man in the lead suddenly spoke furiously, "Shut up." As soon as he spoke, he waved his sleeve, and a terrifying force surged out. Madame Zhao's expression changed slightly, and she punched out. Rumble. Madame Zhao was blasted back by over 1 kilometer. After stopping, Madame Zhao's expression was extremely unsightly. "Why? Why are you still protecting him when he broke the rules? It's unfair. This world is unfair." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Oh my God, it seems that you guys started this, didn't it? Moreover, you provoked me to kill your gigolo on purpose? Why do you make it seem like I'm an unforgivable evil?" Madame Zhao stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "The rules of Celestial Treasure City state that we can't fight, or we'll be breaking the rules of Celestial Treasure Pavilion. I only talked and didn't fight, but you did. If Celestial Treasure Pavilion doesn't punish you, the heavens won't forgive you. Also, Celestial Treasure Pavilion broke the rules this time. In the future, who will follow the rules of Celestial Treasure Pavilion?" Yi Xian suddenly turned and looked at the old man beside him. The rules of Celestial Treasure City state that we can't fight, right? The old man hesitated for a moment before saying, yes. Yi Xian nodded slightly. He looked up and saw that it was noon. He thought for a moment before saying, from today onwards, we can fight at noon in Celestial Treasure City. Old man, everyone, Yi Xian turned and left. At this moment, Madame Xiao suddenly said angrily, you think you can change the rules just because you say so? Who do you think you are? In the distance, a voice suddenly sounded from above Celestial Treasure Pavilion. From today onwards, we can fight at noon in Celestial Treasure City. Celestial Treasure Pavilion's President Xiao Lan. Hearing this, everyone in the city was petrified. The rules were really changed? In the distance, Madame Xiao was stunned, and then she said with a trembling voice, holy shit. Ridiculous. P.S. I wanted to say some nonsense and share some interesting things in real life, but after thinking about it, I deleted it. Because I didn't want to be scolded. Now that the internet was in chaos, it was ridiculous. A kind word warms people for 3 winters, but an evil word hurts people for 6 months. Sometimes, a single sentence from a reader could really make an author depressed for a long time. Scolding people online didn't require any capital, and there was no need to take responsibility. Therefore, many people didn't have any scruples, and they didn't care whether their malicious words would affect or hurt others. As for updating, it wasn't an excuse. Once people got married and started a family, there would be many mundane things to do. This was something that one couldn't help but feel helpless about. Anyway, thank you everyone for your support and companionship, and thank you for reading my book. If you want to scold, don't bring your family. Just scold me. Chapter 23-29. Everyone in the city was completely dumbfounded. Especially those who were watching Yi Xian. They did not expect that the rules of Celestial Treasure City would be broken by a young man. No, not broken, but changed. As Madame Xiao said, this was outrageous. Of course, more people were curious about the young man's identity. Could he be a relative of Celestial Treasure Pavilion's pavilion master? Gu Han glanced at Madame Xiao. Idiot. Then she turned and left. Madame Xiao. At this moment, the 2 demigod elders appeared in front of Madame Xiao. Seeing this scene, Madame Xiao's expression changed drastically. Xiao family? I am Xiao family. The leading old man sighed in a low voice. It's useless. Madame Xiao. No one knew how Celestial Treasure Pavilion dealt with Madame Xiao. Anyway, since then, Madame Xiao never appeared in Celestial Treasure City again. Today was the day of Celestial Treasure Pavilion's auction. Thus, Celestial Treasure City was extremely lively. Many forces rushed over from all over the universe. The reason why they were so enthusiastic was that Celestial Treasure Pavilion was going to auction a relic. Dao God's secret realm. This secret realm was built by a Dao God. Speaking of Dao God, he was undoubtedly a legendary figure. In the current historical records, he was the first person to surpass the ancient God realm. Currently, the limit of the known universe was the ancient God realm. There had never been an expert above the ancient God realm, and this Dao God was also a legend. However, no one expected that Qin Guan actually found the Dao God's secret realm. What did that mean? It meant that this Dao God really existed. In other words, finding this secret realm was very likely to obtain the Dao God's inheritance. Demigod experts were moved, ancient God experts were moved, and ancient God experts were even more moved. Thus, the forces that came to this auction were all super forces of various universes. Just as Yi Xian and Gu Han arrived at the entrance of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Xiao Lan personally came out to greet them. Xiao Lan smiled. Young Master Yi, I will take you to your room. Then he made an inviting gesture and led the way. Under Xiao Lan's lead, Yi Xian and Gu Han came to a luxurious room. From this position, they could overlook the entire auction venue. It was the best position. Xiao Lan smiled and said, Young Master Yi, are you also here for the ruins? Yi Xian was a little curious. What ruins? Xiao Lan was slightly startled, then explained, Dao God Ruins. Yi Xian frowned. Dao God Ruins? Xiao Lan nodded. I wonder if young Master Yi has heard of Jun Daoshan from back then? Yi Xian shook his head. Xiao Lan said in a low voice, this person is an extraordinary genius, the #1 expert in the known universe because he is the first person to surpass the primordial god realm. When he spoke up to hear, he paused for a moment and said, of course, it can't be compared to the Yang clan. Yi Xian was speechless. Gu Han glanced at Yi Xian in shock. Xiao Lan continued, previously, we received news from the pavilion master that the specific location of these ruins is being auctioned. If young master wants to bid for the map of these ruins, I'm afraid you will need to prepare at least 200 million universe veins. Yi Xian frowned. If I need it, I can just look for Qin Guan, right? Hearing this, Xiao Lan was slightly stunned, and then he hurriedly said, yes, yes. He suddenly blushed with shame. Only now did he remember that the relationship between Yi Xian and his pavilion master was not good. Like this. To outsiders, this map of the ruins was extremely precious, but in Qin Guan's hands, it was probably no different from waste paper. If Yi Xian needed it, he could just ask her for it. Wouldn't that be a very simple matter? Yi Xian suddenly asked, is there anything I can use in today's auction? Xiao Lan said in a low voice, today, we will auction 2 god items. First, the Dao God Ruins, and second, the Heaven and Earth Dao Stone Fragment. Yi Xian frowned. The Heaven and Earth Dao Stone Fragment? Xiao Lan nodded. This complete Heaven and Earth Dao Stone contains 3 extremely terrifying powers, the power of the past, the power of the present, and the power of the future. Yi Xian suddenly thought of something, and a few breaths later, a sword appeared in front of Xiao Lan without any warning. Slash the future. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Lan. Is it like this? Xiao Lan shook his head. Young Master Yi, this is only slashing the future, purely slashing the future, and you do not truly possess the power to slash the future. This is a special kind of power. In secular terms, your sword slash the future only has form and no inner strength, which means that you do not truly control the power of the future. Of course, this sword of yours is also extremely strong, because it is too strange, and your attainments in the way of the sword are extremely high, but to true experts, it is not much of a threat, such as the ancient god realm. And that Heaven and Earth Dao Stone, if it is a complete Heaven and Earth Dao Stone, once it is activated, it can easily slash an ancient god realm. Yi Xian said softly, is it that powerful? Xiao Lan nodded. Very powerful. This god item fragment was placed here by the pavilion master to be auctioned. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. If it is so powerful, why is she auctioning it? Xiao Lan smiled bitterly. The pavilion master does not like it. Yi Xian, Xiao Lan suddenly stood up. Young Master Yi, the auction is about to begin. I need to preside over it. If you need anything, just let me know. Yi Xian nodded. Go. Xiao Lan bowed slightly, then retreated. On the square, Yi Xian looked down. At this time, more and more people had arrived. He was a little shocked, because the weakest among them was at least at the nascent profound realm. There were even more demigods and ancient gods. Obviously, many forces wanted to obtain this ruin. Dao God's inheritance. Yi Xian directly gave up on this idea because he did not have that much money. At this time, the Daoist on Yi Xian's waist suddenly trembled. Yi Xian stood up. Beside him, Gu Han frowned. What is it? Yi Xian's eyes narrowed. Danger. Danger. In that instant, the Daoist gave him feedback. Danger. The Daoist had never given him such feedback before. At this time, the Daoist's voice suddenly resounded in his mind. Leave immediately. Leave immediately. Yi Xian's expression instantly became serious. He knew that something big was about to happen. Without any hesitation, he opened his palm and was about to activate the Mystic Sky token to call Xiao Lan. At this moment, a terrifying pressure suddenly enveloped the entire celestial treasure pavilion. At this instant, the expressions of countless experts in the hall changed drastically. Someone is going to attack the celestial treasure pavilion? Below, Xiao Lan's eyes narrowed, and his right hand slowly clenched. Who ate leopard's gall? Who dared to attack the celestial treasure pavilion? At this moment, a room suddenly turned into a pitch-black whirlpool. Xiao Lan was horrified when he saw this scene. Presumptuous! Presumptuous! As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly leaped up and grabbed at the whirlpool with his right hand. At this moment, a terrifying force suddenly erupted from the whirlpool. Rumble! In an instant, Xiao Lan, who was an ancient god, was blasted over 100 kilometers back. At the same time, the entire celestial treasure pavilion collapsed, and all the experts below the half-god realm perished in an instant. The entire celestial treasure city was shocked. That's an ancient god. Did an ancient god attack the celestial treasure pavilion? On the other side, Xiao Lan looked towards the distance with astonishment. At this moment, his body had actually shattered. He hadn't fought an ancient god in the past, and this was the first time. Only now did he realize how great the gap between him and an ancient god was. As if he'd thought of something, Xiao Lan hurriedly opened his palm, and a command token shot into the sky. Contact Qin Guan. This matter is very serious, and I must contact Qin Guan. However, in next to no time, Xiao Lan's expression changed once more because he noticed that he couldn't contact Qin Guan. Can't contact him? What's going on? Xiao Lan's face suddenly turned slightly pale. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian and Gu Han appeared on a boundless wasteland. The sky above them was dark gray, and it was slightly oppressive. Yi Xian closed his eyes and thought to himself, who was targeting him? He basically had no enemies now. Was it Madame Xiao from before? Obviously not. The other party shouldn't have such a terrifying ability. Imperial Wilderness Celestial Clan? That was also impossible. Although he had agreed to help Gu Han compete with them, the other party shouldn't have done this to him. Moreover, the Imperial Wilderness Celestial Clan probably didn't have such terrifying strength. Ancient God. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. He thought of the ancient god of the Divine Mountain Yen clan. Obviously, it should be that person. After so long, he thought that the other party had forgotten him. Obviously, he was thinking too much. At this moment, in the distance in front of Yi Xian, the ground suddenly split open. Then, a huge blood-red altar suddenly floated up. On this altar, he saw two middle-aged men. One of them was the ancient god he met at the Divine Mountain Yen clan. And beside this middle-aged man stood a middle-aged man in a bright red robe. This middle-aged man didn't look old, but he had a head of white hair. As the altar slowly rose, Yi Xian discovered that there were 6 mysterious black-robed people standing below the altar. And these 6 people were all in the ancient god realm. When he saw this, Gu Han's face instantly turned pale. What kind of lineup was this? 1 ancient god, 7 ancient gods? At this time, the ancient god on the altar looked at Yi Xian. You didn't expect this, did you? We meet again. Yi Xian smiled slightly. You made such a big lineup just to kill me? The ancient god stared at Yi Xian and smiled. Let me introduce myself. I am Xian Mu from the Profound God World. This person next to me is my Profound God World's Lord. I know that you have not heard of the Profound God World, because with your knowledge and strength, you are not qualified to know such a high-level matter. Yi Xian glanced at the altar. On the altar, there was a huge blood pool with boiling blood. What are you trying to do? Xian Mu looked at Yi Xian and chuckled. Wasn't the reason why you were so arrogant that day because you had Daoist? Do you think that with Daoist, you can do whatever you want? Do you think that with Daoist, you can act tough without restraint? Watch how we seal Daoist today. You will pay the most painful price of your life for acting tough that year. He pointed at Yi Xian angrily. Who asked you to act tough? Today, I will exterminate your 10 families. Chapter 23:30. The 10 Clans. Yi Xian fell silent. This mysterious operation is happening again. Could it be that Daoist has arranged for these fellows in front of me? Daoist, at this moment, the Lord of the Profound God Realm suddenly turned around, opened his palm, and said softly, "Rise." Boom. All of a sudden, the blood in the altar behind him shot into the sky. In an instant, millions of kilometers of the sky were dyed blood red. At the same time, a huge blood vortex appeared above Yi Xian's head. At this moment, evil energy and killing intent filled the entire world. The Lord of the Profound God Realm looked at Yi Xian. The blood of millions of living beings form a formation, seal. As soon as he finished speaking, the black vortex suddenly trembled violently. Then, a pillar of blood 300 meters wide descended from the sky. This blood pillar's main target was Daoist. Below, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes and clenched his right hand. Just when the Lord of the Profound God Realm and the others thought that Yi Xian was going to resist, Yi Xian did nothing and allowed the blood pillar to drown him. Boom! In an instant, the entire world was turned into a sea of blood. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Rumble! 2 blood-colored sword lights suddenly shot out from his eyes. In an instant, the space-time in front of him was shattered. At this moment, Yi Xian was actually covered in blood. Boom! All of a sudden, the sea of blood between heaven and earth surged towards Yi Xian like a tidal wave. Seeing this scene, the Lord of the Profound God Realm and the others were dumbfounded. What's going on? Because they realized that not only did their blood formation have no effect on Yi Xian, but Yi Xian was actually devouring the blood energy between heaven and earth. Most unbelievably, they realized that the killing intent and evil energy that Yi Xian was emitting was actually stronger than the killing intent and evil energy they emitted. What the hell? The Lord of the Profound God Realm and the others were a little confused. Gu Han, who had retreated far away, also looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. She didn't expect that the usually gentle Yi Xian would emit such a terrifying evil energy and killing intent. It was as if he was a completely different person. What kind of person is this guy? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly roared to the sky. Rumble! In an instant, all the blood energy between heaven and earth was absorbed by him. Boom! All of a sudden, a dreadful energy swept out of Yi Xian's body. The space and time around him started to boil at this moment. After absorbing the blood qi, the power of his bloodline became even stronger. All along, his bloodline had been improving very, very slowly. This was because he wasn't like his father, who basically didn't do something like massacring an entire city. Because of this, his bloodline was improving very slowly. But now, the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm had taken the initiative to bring him so much fresh blood. Most importantly, the fresh blood was filled with endless killing intent and viciousness. To Yi Xian's bloodline, it was like a good rain after a long drought. Yi Xian's bloodline broke through and reached another level. In the distance, the Lord of the God Realm and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. Yi Xian's bloodline had improved. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked up at Xian Mu, one-on-one. One-on-one. Xian Mu looked at Yi Xian, as you wish. After saying that, he was about to make a move, but the Lord of the God Realm stopped him. Xian Mu said in a low voice, Big brother, I know that we can't underestimate anyone, but I want to fight him fair and square. As he spoke, he turned his head. He looked at Yi Xian, I don't like him and I want to kill him with my own hands. The Lord of the God Realm fell silent. Xian Mu smiled, If Big Brother is worried, it's okay. If I can't win, you can fight him. How about it? Yi Xian, the Lord of the God Realm nodded, Sure. Xian Mu suddenly appeared not far away from Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. Today. At this moment, a sword suddenly slashed down. Void slash. This sword had appeared without any warning. However, Yi Xian went all out as soon as he attacked, and he even added the power of his bloodline. He naturally didn't dare to underestimate his opponent because he was facing an ancient God Realm expert. His first move was a killing move. Although Yi Xian launched a surprise attack, Xian Mu reacted quickly and blocked it with his arm. Boom! The sword light shattered and Xian Mu was knocked back thousands of meters. His right arm was split open, but in the next moment, he disappeared on the spot like an arrow released from a bow. In the battlefield, space-time cracked. In the distance, Yi Xian slashed down instinctively. Rumble! An expanse of sword light exploded apart as Yi Xian retreated explosively. As he retreated, the space in front of him was suddenly torn apart, and then a fist shot towards his face. This punch caused the space in the surroundings to warp. Yi Xian suddenly moved to the side and avoided this terrifying punch. At the same time, he twisted his wrist and slashed his sword towards Xian Mu's stomach. However, Xian Mu's reaction was extremely swift. At the instant that he avoided that punch, he suddenly raised his knee and struck Yi Xian's sword. Bang! An expanse of sword light suddenly erupted in front of them. In the next moment, both of them retreated explosively, and a few dozen rays of sword light suddenly and mysteriously appeared in front of Xian Mu. Xian Mu's pupils constricted slightly when he saw these rays of sword light, and then he suddenly howled furiously while he clenched his fists tightly. After that, he raised his hands, squatted down, and shouted furiously, "Break! Rumble!" A strand of terrifying energy suddenly swept out from within him. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian's swords were blasted flying, and it was at this instant that an afterimage suddenly charged over to him. After that, a blood-red sword slashed straight towards him. Bang! In an instant, Xian Mu was blasted over 10 kilometers back. As soon as he stopped moving, a few hundred swords descended from the sky and drowned him beneath them. They were swords condensed from sword intent. Xian Mu's pupils had suddenly constricted to the size of needles when the swords assaulted him, and then he suddenly roared furiously. He spread open his right palm, and then countless black blades suddenly flew up into the air. Bang! 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 Suddenly, numerous explosions resounded here. The rays of sword light and blade light were ceaselessly blasted apart while Xian Mu retreated explosively. At the same time, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. A ray of blood-red light tore through the surroundings, and everywhere it passed, space was blasted into pieces. Right at this moment, a strand of terrifying force suddenly swept out from within the shattered rays of light. After that, a fist smashed forward with crushing might and shot straight at Yi Xian's ray of blood-red light. Rumble! The fist seal shattered and the sword light shone brightly. Both of them retreated by over 10 kilometers at the same time, and this retreat caused the space in an area of over 100 kilometers to shatter into nothingness like glass. It was pitch black. On the other hand, the terrifying energy created by the two of them still hadn't vanished. So, the shattered space was being gradually wiped away. The two of them were too strong. On the other side, Gu Han's eyes were filled with a solemn and shocked expression appeared on his face. She had never imagined that Yi Xian was actually powerful to this extent. Previously, she was still able to suppress Yi Xian, but now, Yi Xian was able to fight an ancient god on equal footing. This increase in strength was simply outrageous. It should be said that it was abnormal. But soon, she discovered why Yi Xian's combat strength was so terrifying. First, the power of bloodline. At the moment, most of Yi Xian's battle prowess came from the power of the bloodline that had just broken through. The power of the bloodline had increased his battle prowess by too much. Secondly, it was Yi Xian's sword intent. She discovered that the reason why Yi Xian could fight an ancient god head-on, other than bloodline power, was because of Yi Xian's sword intent. Yi Xian's sword intent was ridiculously powerful, able to injure an ancient god realm master. These two reasons allowed Yi Xian to fight an ancient god realm master head-on. The profound god world's lord also noticed this problem. Although Yi Xian's cultivation was only at the profound insight realm, his bloodline power and sword intent were indeed a little ridiculous. In the distance, Xian Mu's eyes were fixed on Yi Xian. At this moment, his body was covered in sword marks, some of which were extremely deep, almost cutting his flesh into pieces. Although he didn't like Yi Xian, he had to admit that Yi Xian's sword was truly terrifying. Yi Xian wasn't completely unscathed either. There was a deep fist mark on his chest. Just now, Xian Mu's punch had nearly shattered his flesh. Yi Xian took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. His body was trembling slightly. After devouring the blood qi, he almost lost control of his bloodline breakthrough. Fortunately, he had read a lot of books in recent days, allowing him to calm his mind. Otherwise, in that split second just now, The bloodline breakthrough would have made him lose his mind completely. Now, he couldn't lose his mind completely. He needed to keep himself awake. He didn't attack again. To him, the longer he could drag things out, the better, because after activating his bloodline power, his strength was constantly rising. There was no end to it. In the distance, Xianmu clearly noticed this as well. He stared at Yi Xian and slowly clenched his right hand. In an instant, a terrifying power suddenly condensed in his fist. At this moment, the surrounding space and time began to shatter bit by bit. It was obvious that he was going to use his full strength. At this moment, Xianmu soared into the sky. In the next moment, a giant black mirror suddenly flew out of his body. He held the mirror in his right hand and pointed it at Yi Xian. Rumble! A terrifying power suddenly surged out of the mirror. In an instant, a golden beam of light swept down. The moment this golden beam of light appeared, this unknown world actually began to shatter. Xianmu stared at Yi Xian below. Die! At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked up. In the next moment he suddenly took off the Daoist at his waist. In the blink of an eye, his realm directly rose from profound insight to ancient god. At this moment, his realm was directly equal to Xianmu's. Below, Yi Xian waved his brush. The tip of the brush slashed out. In the sky, the beam of light was directly annihilated. At the same time, Xianmu was directly sent flying hundreds of thousands of meters away. Almost at the same time, the Lord of the Profound God realm suddenly disappeared on the spot. In the distance, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. He wanted to wave the Daoist again, but he found that it was already too late. Rumble! A cloud of blood suddenly exploded, and an afterimage violently retreated hundreds of thousands of meters away. When Yi Xian stopped, only his soul was left, and his physical body was already shattered. Yi Xian's soul fell to the ground and quickly disappeared. Chapter 23:31. Disregarding martial ethics. Ganging up on him. After Yi Xian landed on the ground, he was enraged. At this moment, a fragrant wind blew over and he felt he had entered an unknown spacetime. Guhan actually came to his rescue at this crucial moment. Of course, she did not choose to fight the Lord of the Profound God world but chose to escape with Yi Xian. In the battlefield, the Lord of the Profound God world looked up at the sky with narrowed eyes. Trying to escape? He was about to give chase when an ancient God realm expert suddenly said in a trembling voice, "Lord Xianmu." The Lord of the Profound God world turned his head abruptly. When he saw Xianmu, his expression turned ferocious. At this moment, Xianmu's soul was so dim that it was almost transparent. "It's gone." The Lord of the Profound God world quickly walked to Xianmu and said in a trembling voice, "You?" Xianmu shook his head. "I can't." The Lord of the Profound God world's expression was extremely gloomy. Xianmu said softly, "I was too arrogant. That Daoist." A bitter smile appeared on his face as he said this. He was an ancient God realm expert while Yi Xian was a profound insight realm expert. Therefore, he was full of confidence. One should know that ordinary profound insight realm experts couldn't even fight back in front of him. However, Yi Xian was different. Yi Xian's bloodline power and sword intent far exceeded his expectations. His plan was to choose to gang up on Yi Xian if he couldn't win the last attack. However, Yi Xian didn't give him the chance and directly activated Daoist. Now that Yi Xian activated Daoist, it was simply too terrifying. Xianmu looked at the Lord of the Profound God world and said in a fierce voice, "Big brother, avenge me." As soon as he finished speaking, his soul completely disappeared. The Lord of the Profound God world's expression was incomparably ferocious. Xianmu was his younger brother. The two brothers grew up together and their relationship was not ordinary. Now that Xianmu was completely erased, his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. The Lord of the Profound God world slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, he was filled with regret. Incomparable regret. They shouldn't have let Xianmu and Yi Xian fight one-on-one. In the end, he was too careless. The realm Lord of the Profound God realm raised his head and looked at the sky. His gaze was extremely cold. Escape? Let's see where you can run to. Send my order to all the heavens. Yi Xian is the mortal enemy of my profound God realm from now on. Being friends with this person is equivalent to being enemies with my profound God realm. Anyone related to Yi Xian will be killed by the profound God realm. With that, he and the 6 ancient God realm masters beside him soared into the sky. Go after Yi Xian. The announcement of the profound God realm quickly spread throughout the universe. Many people did not know much about the profound God realm because it was a mysterious and ancient force. Only those who had reached a certain level of strength would know about this terrifying force. There was an ancient God realm in the profound God realm. Just this alone was enough to make countless forces in the myriad of worlds tremble in fear. Imperial Wilderness God Race. At this moment, Diyuan's face was gloomy, and he did not speak. He had just received the announcement from the profound God realm. He knew a little about the profound God realm because the ancestors of the Imperial Wilderness God race had once come into contact with this force. Other than an ancient God realm master, this force also had at least 5 ancient God realm masters. Needless to say, this lineup was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Diyuan was worried, because he had previously said that Di Zhuang and Yi Xian had that kind of relationship. There was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Once this matter was known by the profound God realm, it would undoubtedly be a calamity for the Imperial Wilderness God race. Now, he was really in a dilemma. He had 2 choices now. The first was to help Yi Xian. Of course, he rejected this idea as soon as it appeared. What could the Imperial Wilderness God race use to go against the profound God realm? The second choice was to quickly express his loyalty to the profound God realm, then help them find Yi Xian and cut off his relationship with Yi Xian. He was hesitant about this choice. The third choice was to act as if he knew nothing. However, he was afraid because the profound God realm's announcement had stated that anyone related to Yi Xian would be killed. Needless to say, he was slightly panicking. Meanwhile, an old man by his side seemed to have noticed his worry and said, "Patriarch, we can do this. We can express our loyalty to the profound God realm and pretend to help them find Yi Xian. We can look for him in secret. If we find him, we won't attack and we can just leak information about Yi Xian to the profound God realm, right?" Diyuan frowned slightly when he heard this. The old man spoke in a low voice, "That's the best way." Diyuan fell silent for a long time before he said, "We'll do as you say." As he spoke, he raised his head to look at the distant sky, and a wisp of worry flashed through his eyes. Actually, he really did admire Yi Xian and had high hopes for Yi Xian. However, he didn't dare take the risk. After all, the strength of the profound God realm was truly too terrifying. He couldn't afford to take the risk. Diyuan sighed softly, "Young Master Yi, it looks like you can't be my son-in-law." The immortal artifact dimension. Xiao Lan's expression was extremely unsightly. He'd received the announcement from the profound God realm as well, so he was naturally furious because the profound God realm dared to disregard the immortal artifact pavilion and capture someone within it. They were looking down on the immortal artifact pavilion. Even though he was furious, he was slightly helpless at this moment. Because he couldn't contact Qin Guan, and only Qin Guan could mobilize some special experts of the immortal artifact pavilion. He was extremely helpless at this moment. As if he'd thought of something, Xiao Lan suddenly stood up. "Send down my order. Immediately search for young Master Yi. If we find him, we must protect him at all costs." At this moment, he finally realized what had happened. If something had really happened to Yi Xian, then it wouldn't be an ordinary matter. Most importantly, Yi Xian had been taken from the immortal artifact pavilion. Xiao Lan suddenly stood up and left when he thought up to this point. He couldn't just sit there and do nothing. He had to look for other immortal artifact pavilions and ask for their help. Under normal circumstances, other immortal artifact pavilions might not care about him, but this matter concerned Yi Xian. Other immortal artifact pavilions would definitely not sit idly by. He was Pavilion Master Qin's friend. Somewhere in the boundless starry sky, Gu Han tore through space and time with Yi Xian as he ran madly. In her arms, Yi Xian's soul was extremely dim. Fortunately, he'd given himself a soul-nourishing pill, which Yang Nianxue had left for him. Otherwise, his soul might really disappear completely. Even so, he was still extremely weak at this moment because he'd forcefully used a deity to raise his cultivation to the ancient god realm. The consumption was too great, and he'd also suffered a full-powered attack from the ancient god realm expert. Currently, he was extremely weak, as if he'd been cultivating for 10 days and 10 nights. He didn't have the slightest bit of strength left. Gu Han suddenly said, "They're chasing after him. At this speed, they'll catch up in 15 minutes at most. Do you have any ideas?" Ideas? After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked at the deity in front of him. Looking at the deity, he was speechless. Even his physical body was destroyed, but this brush was completely fine. Yi Xian said solemnly, "Brother Bai, you were looked down upon by them just now. Don't you have any ideas?" He could only bluff this deity. The deity suddenly said, "What ideas can I have?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Deal with them. Arrange for them." After a moment of silence, the deity said, "My main body can't leave the Milky Way galaxy. How can I deal with them?" Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why can't your main body leave the Milky Way galaxy?" The deity said indifferently, "It's complicated. I can't explain it in a few words." Yi Xian said solemnly, "They're looking down on you. Don't you have any ideas?" The deity said, "Do you want me to help you fight them?" Yi Xian hurriedly nodded, "Yes." After a long silence, the deity said, "Big brother, I call you Big brother. Do you know how busy I am every day? I'm managing this endless universe. Do you know how many universes there are? I can only tell you, more than you can imagine. And every day, I have to manage the fate of all living things in this vast universe. Is it because in your heart, I'm very idle every day?" Yi Xian, the deity continued, "Big brother, I have to work." Yi Xian was speechless. This guy doesn't want to help. A quarter of an hour. Yi Xian took a deep breath. He slowly closed his eyes, and then began to meditate to repair his divine soul. At the same time, he began to reconstruct his physical body. Boom. At this time, Yi Xian's bloodline suddenly circulated rapidly. He wanted to use the power of his bloodline to reconstruct his physical body. This was a sudden idea. Although his physical body had been destroyed, he found that his bloodline was still there. This bloodline was independent of his physical body and soul. Awesome. He hadn't expected that he could actually use his bloodline to reconstruct his physical body. Blood body? Yi Xian felt that it was slightly outrageous, but he had no choice but to continue. He needed a physical body now, and an ordinary physical body couldn't resist the power of an ancient god realm expert at all. It would simply shatter with a touch. Therefore, he could only hope that this bloodline body could be a little more amazing. Seeing Yi Xian use his bloodline to reconstruct his physical body, Gu Han instantly felt that it was slightly outrageous. She was already unable to understand it earlier, because she found that after Yi Xian's physical body was destroyed, the power of his bloodline still existed. Bloodline is independent of the physical body? Gu Han shook her head. She found that the longer she stayed with Yi Xian, the more mysterious Yi Xian became. As if she'd sensed something, Gu Han immediately turned around, and a terrifying force was slowly approaching from the depths of the starry sky behind her. That ancient god realm expert has caught up to us. Gu Han's face instantly fell when she witnessed this scene, and then she gazed at Yi Xian who lay in her arms. "How much longer do you need?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "At least an hour." Gu Han immediately shook her head. "I can't hold on for an hour. They'll catch up to me in 10 minutes at most, and I'm unable to stop them with my current strength." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Then leave by yourself." Gu Han was slightly stunned, and then she fell silent. She'd had such a thought. Yi Xian smiled. "Don't think about it. Leave quickly. You've already owed me a huge favor by saving me earlier. If I survive today, then I'll definitely return this favor once I leave this place." Gu Han fell silent for a moment before she said, "Take care of yourself." As soon as she finished speaking, she put Yi Xian down and vanished into the starry sky. Chapter 23:32. Guhan left. He really left. Of course, Yi Xian had no intention of blaming Guhan. Just as he said, Guhan had saved him just now, which was a great favor to him. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and sat cross-legged on the ground. He had to recover his physical body before the ancient god realm expert arrived. Only then would he have the strength to fight. Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. He really couldn't stay cool for more than 3 days. Boom. At this time, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted in the distant starry sky. In the next moment, the starry sky where Yi Xian was at boiled with excitement. It's here. Yi Xian opened his eyes, which were filled with a sea of blood. At this moment, his physical body had recovered. Blood clone. His entire body was red like blood. This physical body was a little strange. Of course, he couldn't care less now, as long as he had a usable body. The Lord of the Profound God World appeared in front of Yi Xian, and behind him were 6 ancient God Realm experts. The Lord of the Profound God World looked into the distance and asked, "Where's the woman who saved you?" Yi Xian smiled. "She left." The Lord of the Profound God World sneered, "How practical." Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. He slowly stood up, opened his palm, and a blood sword condensed in his hand. This was a sword condensed from sword intent and blood. The Lord of the Profound God World looked at Yi Xian. "Do you think you can fight me?" Yi Xian smiled. "Who do you think you are?" Ha! Boom. Suddenly, the Daoist in Yi Xian's hand shook violently, and in the next moment, his aura directly reached the ancient god realm. However, this wasn't the end. Not long after, he advanced from the ancient god realm to the ancient god realm. Seeing this scene, the Lord of the Profound God World narrowed his eyes. He couldn't deny that he was shocked. Although he was shocked that Yi Xian had advanced to the ancient god realm, he wasn't shocked. After all, it was normal to advance one realm. But now, Yi Xian had advanced from the profound see-through realm to the ancient god realm. This was already abnormal. He was an ancient god realm cultivator. He knew very well how difficult it was to advance from the ancient god realm to the ancient god realm. In the distance, Yi Xian's face was extremely pale. His entire body was trembling and extremely unstable. This was the first time he had used the Daoist to advance 2 realms. At this moment, he felt like he was floating in the air. Ancient God Realm. Yi Xian took a deep breath and looked at the Profound God Realm Lord in the distance. He opened his palm and the sword in his hand turned into the Daoist. He realized that the stronger he was, the more powerful the Daoist was. Holding the Daoist in his hand, Yi Xian took another deep breath. At this moment, the power of the bloodline in his body surged crazily. Strands of terrifying bloodline power gathered in the Daoist in his hand. At the same time, his mortal realm sword intent and mortal realm energy surged crazily at this moment. The Lord of the Profound God Realm narrowed his eyes. "All of you, step back." At his command, the 6 ancient God Realm experts behind him retreated hastily. They knew that the current Yi Xian was no longer a match for them. Staying here was meaningless. The Lord of the Profound God Realm opened his right hand. All of a sudden, the surrounding galaxy trembled violently. In the next moment, countless mysterious forces gathered in his right hand. The force of destiny and the power of faith. As an ancient god, he naturally had the power of faith. At this time, Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at the Lord of the Profound God Realm. "Let's decide life and death in one move." As his voice fell, he suddenly swung the brush in his hand. A blood-colored brush tip slashed out. The strongest attack in history. With this stroke of the brush tip, the star field within several million li was instantly erased. In the distance, the Lord of the Profound God Realm's eyes narrowed. The power of Yi Xian's attack far exceeded his expectations. Not daring to underestimate Yi Xian, the Lord of the Profound God Realm roared and punched out. Rumble! A terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth suddenly swept out from his fist. At this time, neither of them had a way out. When the brush tip slashed down, boom! Suddenly, a deafening explosion resounded in this part of the galaxy that had been erased. In the next moment, Yi Xian and the Lord of the Profound God Realm retreated rapidly. Both of them retreated hundreds of thousands of zhang away. When Yi Xian stopped, the physical body that was created by his bloodlines suddenly shattered. But in the next moment, the shattered bloodline reformed, and he had a physical body again. On the other side, after the Lord of the Profound God Realm stopped, his physical body gradually disappeared. In just a few breaths' time, his physical body was completely annihilated. At the same time, his soul also gradually dimmed, almost transparent, but it did not completely disappear. The expressions of the 6 ancient God Realm masters who were watching the battle from the other side turned extremely ugly when they saw this. They did not expect Yi Xian to be so terrifying that he almost killed their lord. That was an ancient God Realm expert. The Lord of the Profound God Realm raised his head to look at Yi Xian in the distance. His face was incomparably gloomy and solemn. That attack just now had almost wiped him out. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and the Daoist appeared in his hand. He looked at the Lord of the Profound God Realm and grinned. Again! The Lord of the Profound God Realm narrowed his eyes. If I'm not wrong, you are now an arrow at the end of its flight. You don't have the strength to activate the Daoist again, right? Yi Xian smiled. You can try. The Lord of the Profound God Realm looked at Yi Xian for a moment, then said, Song, you go. Hearing this, the expression of an ancient God Realm old man behind him changed dramatically. Lord, the Lord of the Profound God Realm looked at Yi Xian in the distance. He is now an arrow at the end of its flight, he has no strength left. Go ahead. The ancient God Realm old man's face was extremely ugly. No strength left? Damn it. What if he did? Who would be able to block the stroke of that brush? At this time, the Lord of the Profound God Realm turned to look at the old man, frowning slightly. Do you have a problem? In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly said, Bring it on. In the worst case, we'll just perish together. Hearing this, the ancient God Realm old man's face turned even uglier. The Lord of the Profound God Realm's face turned cold. Atsong suddenly said, I quit. The Lord of the Profound God Realm was stunned. Atsong's face was expressionless. Lord, from now on I will withdraw from the Profound God Realm. With that, he turned and disappeared into the depths of the distant starry sky. The Lord of the Profound God Realm was speechless. On the other hand, the expressions of the other 5 ancient God Realm experts suddenly became strange. They definitely wouldn't dare to fight Yi Xian. They also knew that Yi Xian was now an arrow at the end of its flight, but it was better to be safe than sorry. What if Yi Xian swung the stroke before he died? Who could stop him? Anyone who attacked Yi Xian now was equivalent to perishing together with Yi Xian. Having cultivated to this level, they naturally didn't want to be killed so easily. The Lord of the Profound God Realm fell silent. He knew that if he let these people attack again, they would also leave. Thinking of this, he felt a little annoyed. Soldiers were trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment, but now, these people were all greedy for life and afraid of death. How hateful! At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, If you don't attack today, your lord won't say anything now, but what about in the future? If I were you, I would run away now, far away, because he doesn't have the ability to chase after you now. Hearing this, the several ancient God Realm masters exchanged glances among themselves. The Lord of the Profound God Realm said coldly, Provoke. He sneered and turned to look at an old man. Li Qiu, one of you is naturally no match for him, but if the 5 of you attack him together, he will die without a doubt. This person is our Profound God Realm's mortal enemy. If he survives today, he will not let you go in the future. Hearing this, the old man named Li Qiu's expression changed. He was hesitating. Yi Xian suddenly laughed. You should have investigated me, and since you have, you should know that I'm a scholar. The reason I built the academy is for the world to be at peace, not for killing. If you choose to leave today, I can promise you as a scholar that I will not seek revenge later. As he spoke, he opened his palm and a sword appeared in his hand. Besides being a scholar, I'm also a sword cultivator. You can trust in my character. Li Qiu glanced at the Daoist hanging on Yi Xian's waist, not saying a word. The Lord of the Profound God Realm was about to speak, but Li Qiu suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, take care." With that said, he and the two old men beside him disappeared into the horizon. The Lord of the Profound God Realm. In the end, Li Qiu was afraid. Why was he afraid? Because of the Daoist. Because of Yi Xian's bloodline. He was definitely not an ordinary person. How could an ordinary person possess the Daoist and such a terrifying bloodline power? Even if he attacked and killed Yi Xian, he would definitely be tainted with karma. In the end, he was afraid. Compared to the Lord of the Profound God Realm, he was more willing to believe in Yi Xian, because as Yi Xian had said, they had investigated Yi Xian before. And Yi Xian was really a scholar. The Lord of the Profound God Realm looked at Yi Xian, capable of both literature and martial arts, impressive. He was furious, but he could not show it. If he did, the remaining two would definitely leave. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly looked at the two remaining Ancient God Realm experts. The reason why the two of them did not leave was because they could be considered as the trusted subordinates of the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm. They had followed the Realm Lord for many years and knew his character. If they left today, the Realm Lord would definitely not let them go. Although they were Ancient God Realm Masters, they still couldn't escape the pursuit of an Ancient God Realm Master. However, they did not dare to kill Yi Xian. He still had the Daoist in his hand. Therefore, they were hesitating. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly looked at one of the black-robed Ancient God Realm old men. "Do you want to take a risk?" The black-robed old man looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian smiled faintly. "With the Daoist in your hand, you can instantly ascend to the Ancient God Realm. If you are willing to worship the Daoist, I can lend it to you and allow you to ascend to the Ancient God Realm." The Lord of the Profound God Realm's expression changed drastically when he heard this. The black-robed old man asked excitedly, "Really?" Yi Xian nodded. "Of course, the prerequisite is that you are willing to worship the Daoist like me." The black-robed old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "How can I believe you?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said, "I am a scholar." The Lord of the Profound God Realm was speechless. Chapter 23:33. A scholar. The Profound God World's Lord's expression instantly became unsightly when he heard Yi Xian's words. He noticed that this bastard was really good at deceiving people. There wasn't a single good person among scholars. Suddenly, the black-robed old man said, "I believe you." Yi Xian opened his palm, and a Daoist slowly floated over to him. The black-robed old man's gaze instantly burned with desire as he gazed at the Daoist. That was the Daoist, the legendary Daoist. Suddenly, the Profound God World's Lord said, "Do you really believe him?" The black-robed old man spoke in a low voice. "He's a scholar. I believe in scholars." The Profound God World's Lord was speechless. The black-robed old man didn't waste his breath at all, and he immediately took hold of the Daoist. Under Yi Xian's authorization, the black-robed old man didn't harm the Daoist after taking hold of the Daoist. The Profound God World's Lord's eyes narrowed slightly when he witnessed this scene, and no one knew what he was thinking. Meanwhile, the Daoist trembled violently. Bang! The black-robed old man's aura suddenly rose explosively. In an instant, the black-robed old man's cultivation had risen from the Ancient God Realm to the Ancient God Realm. A terrifying aura swept through the surroundings. The Profound God World's Lord's expression instantly became extremely unsightly when he witnessed this scene. Yi Xian suddenly said, "I didn't lie to you, right?" The black-robed old man gazed at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian grinned. "Are you thinking about killing me and enjoying the Daoist for yourself? You're in danger if you think like that." The black-robed old man fell silent for a moment before he smiled. "Young Master Yi, you must be joking." Yi Xian smiled, and then he gazed at the Profound God World's Lord. "Aren't you going to deal with this threat?" The Profound God World's Lord's expression was calm. The black-robed elder turned to look at the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm. "Realm Lord, I'm sorry." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack. However, right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the surroundings. In the next moment, a white-haired old man appeared not too far away from the black-robed old man. Ancient God Realm. Seeing this white-haired elder, the black-robed elder's eyes narrowed and were filled with shock. He's my second senior brother. He's not in the profound God Realm, so it's normal that you've never met him. Second brother. At the side, Yixian's chest ached as he listened. Did this digger have a senior brother? The white-haired old man looked at the black-robed old man. You really changed sides after being duped a little? Tell me, how did you manage to reach the ancient God Realm with that kind of brain of yours? The black-robed old man's expression was somewhat unsightly. At this moment he was starting to panic. Although he had used a Daoist to reach the ancient God Realm, he knew that it was equivalent to using a secret technique. There was no way he could compete with a real ancient God Realm expert. The Realm Lord suddenly said, Su Mu, I'll give you one more chance. If you kill Yixian now, I'll pretend that nothing happened. The black-robed old man called Su Mu's face sank. No one knew what he was thinking. Yixian said with a smile, Senior Su Mu, you have no way out now. If it was before, they might not really kill you if you're not a threat to them. But now, you're a threat to them. Do you think they'll really let you go? Saying that, he smiled. Since it's come to this, why don't you give it a try? Compared to them, I should be more trustworthy, right? Su Mu looked at Yixian. Although Yixian was still covered in blood, his expression was sincere. There was no hypocrisy at all. In the distance, the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm chuckled. Su Mu, we have two ancient God Realm experts on our side. If you choose him, Yixian suddenly said, why do you think there's no one behind me? Hearing that, the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm was stunned. Su Mu was also stunned. Yixian smiled faintly. One had to admit that his smile was a little creepy. After all, he was currently in the state where his bloodline was activated. His whole body was covered in blood. Therefore, his smile was not just creepy. Yixian said, Realm Lord, do you think there's no ancient God Realm expert behind me? The Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm looked at Yixian without saying a word. Yixian looked at Su Mu and smiled. My people will arrive in half an hour. Su Mu asked in a deep voice, how many? Yixian said with a smile, 5 ancient God Realm warriors. 5 ancient God Realm experts. Su Mu was stunned when he heard that. The Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm suddenly sneered, 5 ancient God Realm experts? Are you kidding me? Yixian said indifferently, even the Daoist can follow me. What else is impossible? The Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm stared at Yixian. I don't believe it. Yixian smiled and looked at Su Mu. Senior Su Mu, you can help me block this white-haired old man. As for the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm, I will deal with him. The white-haired old man glanced at Yixian, then looked at Su Mu. Su Mu suddenly said, stop talking. I will follow young Master Yi. In the end, he still decided to follow Yixian. As Yixian said, if the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm killed Yixian, he would definitely not let him go. After all, what he did just now was equivalent to betrayal. If he was in Yixian's shoes, he would not let someone who had betrayed him go as well. Moreover, after obtaining the Daoist, he realized that he had severely underestimated the Daoist. In other words, he had severely underestimated Yixian. A young man like him who had the Daoist as his follower was definitely not an ordinary person. Therefore, he decided to take a gamble. Moreover, didn't young Master Yi say that 5 ancient God Realm experts were rushing over? 5 ancient God Realm experts were rushing over. 5 ancient God Realm experts. The white-haired old man's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard Su Mu's words, and he suddenly vanished on the spot, heading straight for Yixian. Obviously, he wanted to kill Yixian first. Meanwhile, Su Mu suddenly roared furiously, and then he charged at the white-haired old man. Yixian glanced at the two of them, then looked at the last ancient God Realm expert beside the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm. Are you still not leaving? Once we recover from our injuries, you won't be able to leave even if you want to. I'm leaving. The last ancient god realm expert didn't waste any time, and he turned around and vanished into the horizon. The realm lord of the profound god realm stared fixedly at Yi Xian. I have to say, you're really amazing. Relying on your silver tongue, you tricked 5 ancient god realm experts by my side, and you even made one of them work for you. Amazing. Yi Xian paid no attention to the realm lord, and he slowly closed his eyes. Recuperate. He had to recuperate as soon as possible because he noticed that Su Mu wasn't a match for the white-haired old man. Su Mu's strength was a little exaggerated. Moreover, although he could use the Daoist to improve his cultivation, he couldn't directly utilize the Daoist in battle. So, he naturally had to hold back to guard against the white-haired old man. He wouldn't completely trust the white-haired old man. Seeing that Yi Xian was recuperating, the realm lord of the profound god realm also started to recuperate, and his body gradually recovered. However, Yi Xian's recovery was even faster. Yi Xian had the undying bloodline and the medicinal pellets Yang Yanxue had given him. Therefore, in terms of recuperation, not many could compare to him. Seeing that Yi Xian's injuries were recovering so quickly, the realm lord's expression turned ugly. He knew that it wouldn't be long before Yi Xian completely recovered, and at that time, the situation would be extremely disadvantageous to him. Moreover, he noticed that Yi Xian's aura was still growing stronger. Powerful. Bloodline power. The bloodline power was still increasing Yi Xian's strength. After a moment of silence, the realm lord suddenly opened his right hand, and a token flew out from his hand and disappeared into the endless starry sky. In the distance, Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at the realm lord with a slight frown. You're still calling for help? The realm lord asked. Can't I? Yi Xian said solemnly, You're going a little overboard. The realm lord said sarcastically, Overboard? In this era, who would fight you alone? Yi Xian was silent. That was simply unethical. The realm lord stared at Yi Xian. No matter who is behind you, you must die today. I Xiantian said it. In the distance, Yi Xian was silent. Was it time for him to call for help? If this went on, there would be more and more people calling for help, and he wouldn't be able to handle it. At this time, the realm lord suddenly laughed. You seem to be afraid. Yi Xian glanced at the realm lord. You talk too much nonsense. The realm lord was about to speak when a sword suddenly appeared in front of the realm lord's brow. The realm lord of the profound god realm narrowed his eyes and punched out. Rumble. With a loud explosion, Yi Xian's sword light instantly shattered. At this time, he suddenly rushed in front of Xiantian and slashed down with his sword. A wisp of difficulty flashed through Xiantian's eyes, and he punched forward. Rumble. Both of them retreated at the same time, and this time, both of them retreated by over 3 kilometers. In the distance, as soon as Yi Xian stopped, a wisp of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, but it didn't take long for him to absorb the blood. Yi Xian took a deep breath and glanced to his right. At this moment, Su Mu couldn't hold on any longer. Yi Xian's face sank. He looked at the realm lord and was about to attack when the realm lord suddenly laughed. You're getting impatient. Ha, you're getting impatient. Earlier, you said that there were 5 ancient god realm experts that came. You're simply bluffing. He narrowed his eyes slightly. Are you an abandoned pawn of some power? After fighting for so long, none of the people behind you have shown up. I can't think of any other reason besides you being an abandoned pawn. In the distance, Yi Xian's expression was calm. He opened his palm, and a sword silently condensed there. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared behind him. Yi Xian's pupils constricted, and he swiftly turned around and blocked it with his sword. Rumble. Yi Xian retreated explosively for over 30 kilometers. As soon as he stopped moving, the blood-red sword in his hand and his body were instantly obliterated, and his soul actually dimmed like a wisp of smoke. He hadn't recovered from his injuries just now, and now he was attacked by an extraordinary expert. So, he was naturally unable to resist it. An old man stood where he stood just now. The old man had shoulder-length hair, a gloomy gaze, and a terrifying aura. Another ancient god realm expert. Meanwhile, Xianxia smiled. Allow me to introduce myself. This is my eldest senior brother, Ku Rong. He's also an ancient god realm expert. As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian. You said that your people would arrive in an hour. Now an hour has passed. Where are your people? Yi Xian grinned, and then he wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth. You're right, I don't have anyone. Isn't your father human? Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded by Yi Xian's ears. In the next moment, the space beside Yi Xian split apart, and then a man in a green robe walked out slowly. Yi Xian was stunned. Xianxia glanced at the swordsman and sneered, Just one? Just one? Who are you looking down on? Chapter 23:34. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the green-robed man. He did not expect his father to come. However, it was not his real body. Obviously, his real body was very far away. Of course, even then, he was still slightly surprised. The green-robed man sized up Yi Xian and smiled. You look a little miserable. Yi Xian grinned and blood flowed out slowly. Luckily, you're not dead. The green-robed man smiled. Don't be angry. I was in a much worse state than you were back then. Yi Xian immediately asked, So, you want your son to be in a worse state than you, right? The green-robed man fell silent. Yi Xian asked again. Of course, I can't blame you. After all, I caused this trouble. I can understand that I have to clean up my own mess. The green-robed man shook his head and smiled. I know you're angry, but you have to understand me. Yi Xian suddenly interrupted the green-robed man. Can we be more sincere and less deceitful? The green-robed man's expression froze and he swallowed the words he wanted to say. At this moment, Xianxia's eldest senior brother suddenly said coldly, Are you done talking? The green-robed man turned to look at the eldest senior brother. Do you have anything to say? The eldest senior brother looked at the green-robed man coldly. Yes. A sword suddenly pierced through the eldest senior brother's forehead. Boom. In an instant, the eldest senior brother was nailed to the spot and could not move at all. Everyone present was petrified. The green-robed man looked at the dumbfounded eldest senior brother. Anything else? The eldest senior brother was about to speak, but he disappeared without a trace in the next moment. He was wiped out. The green-robed man frowned slightly. So weak? I didn't even use 5% of my strength, and you're gone? That's it? Yi Xian was speechless. Xianxia looked at the green-robed man in terror and said with a trembling voice, Who are you? The green-robed man pointed at Yi Xian and smiled. Can't you tell? I'm his father. Yi Xian was speechless. Xianxia's face was pale and his entire body was trembling. Instant kill. Killing an ancient god in an instant? This was outrageous. This scene had overturned Xianxia's understanding. Because in his opinion, this was simply impossible. However, this was the truth, and it was simply insane. On the other side, Su Mu and second senior brother Xianxia stopped as well. At this moment, their faces were filled with shock. Instantly killing an ancient god? This was simply abnormal. Of course, Su Mu was overjoyed after his initial shock. He was a little panicked in the beginning, especially when he saw the Dark Heaven sect's eldest senior brother. He was on the verge of death. He was on the verge of despair. However, he didn't expect Yi Xian's father to show up. Moreover, it was so terrifying. It was a complete turnaround. Su Mu couldn't help but burst into laughter. His laughter was very crazy. At this moment, the azure-robed man looked at Su Mu. Su Mu was scared out of his wits and immediately said, Young Master Yi. Yi Xian immediately said, He's with me. The azure-robed man was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he smiled embarrassedly. I'm sorry. You don't look like a good person. I almost killed you in an instant. Su Mu, the azure-robed man turned to look at Yi Xian helplessly. Look, my clone came here from countless starfields just to kill a few ants. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Have you ever thought that they are ants to me? The azure-robed man fell silent. He really hadn't thought about this. Yi Xian continued, You might not have thought about it, but Xiaota told me that you were very extreme in the past. You were extreme and especially chauvinistic. As he spoke, he shook his head. Xiaota is really right. Xiaota, the azure-robed man frowned slightly. It's said that? Xiaota, Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. He didn't speak anymore, and his expression was a little gloomy and miserable. The azure-robed man hesitated for a moment. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know where to start. At this moment, Xian Tian's second senior brother suddenly said with a trembling voice, "You." The azure-robed man suddenly turned around and slashed with his sword. Boom! That second senior brother disappeared on the spot. He was completely erased. Xian Tian, Su Mu's expression also froze at this moment. He also trembled. Why does young Master Ye's father look like a bad person? The azure-robed man was expressionless. We are talking. Why are you interrupting? Second senior brother, who had already passed away, the azure-robed man looked at Yi Xian and sighed softly. I do owe you something. I have to admit that. However, Tianming and your mother dote on you so much. If I also dote on you, do you think it's really a good thing for you? Yi Xian was silent. The azure-robed man continued, It's not that I don't care about you, but I really don't want you to become a complete second generation. Now, you've walked out of your own path of the sword, and you have a brand new goal. This is extremely good. It can be said that your sword Dao is now on the right track. As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said, The mortal world is like a whetstone, and it's very good at tempering you. Including this time, although you were beaten up badly, I believe that after this battle, you must have gained a lot, right? Father didn't lie to you, right? Yi Xian nodded, Yes. The azure-robed man said again, How can you achieve Dao without going through great hardship? This sentence does make some sense. Most of the time, hardship and hardship are the best to train the human heart. The human heart is the heart of the sword. The more tenacious your heart is, the sharper your sword will be. I let you suffer not because I was once left to fend for myself, but because my heart was twisted, I let you go. Father's ultimate goal is for you to become a talented person. Can you understand Father's painstaking efforts? Yi Xian glanced at the azure-robed man. Are you trying to lie to me? The azure-robed man said seriously, Then do you think what I said makes sense? Yi Xian nodded. I admit that what you said makes sense. The azure-robed man smiled slightly and felt very gratified. You're different after all. You're sensible. Very good. Yi Xian suddenly said, Then do you think that you're qualified as a father? The azure-robed man's expression froze. This fellow actually wasn't tricked. Yi Xian continued, Father, I didn't say that it's wrong of you to fend for yourself to fend for yourself. What I'm more angry about is that as a father, you've always had no sense of existence in my heart. Do you think that's your fault or mine? Tell me. The azure-robed man fell silent. Yi Xian continued, Father, do you think it's normal for a person to be without a father for 18 years? The azure-robed man fell silent. Yi Xian went on, My previous enemies have always been abnormal. They were abnormal in all kinds of ways. Dad, do you know? No, you don't. You only know that I can't beat them, but you've never cared about why I can't beat them. Moreover, you've always liked to impose your views on me, just like those students in the secular world. Their parents constantly ask them to become the kind of person their parents want them to be when they're very young. As he spoke, he shook his head slightly. Father, you fended for yourself because you want me to become a powerful person like you. That's not wrong. But later on, you constantly imposed your views on me and then asked me to become a person like you. Have you ever thought about it? I'm not you. In this world, there's only one azure-robed sword master. There won't be a second one. The azure-robed man sighed softly. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but the azure-robed man suddenly opened his palm, and a spatial ring appeared in his hand. Then he placed the spatial ring in Yi Xian's hand. Father understands. Don't say any more. Yi Xian glanced at the spatial ring, and there were actually 100 million universe veins in the spatial ring. How extravagant! Yi Xian's eyelids twitched, and his heartbeat sped up. The azure-robed man suddenly took out an ancient book and placed it in Yi Xian's hand. This book is almost 10 times more powerful than the void/sword. It was specially created by Father and your big brother for you. Keep it well. Yi Xian blinked and hurriedly put the ancient book away. The azure-robed man sighed softly. Father does owe you. Can you forgive Father? As he spoke, he took out a black box, but he didn't give it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian immediately said, Father, what are you talking about? Why do we talk about forgiveness between father and son? Don't say such hurtful words in the future. I don't like it. The azure-robed man blinked. You're really not angry? Yi Xian glanced at the black box, and then he said seriously, I'm not angry. I've never been angry. The azure-robed man sighed softly. You said that I didn't accompany you when you were young. Alas, I'm ashamed. Father is ashamed. Yi Xian hurriedly said, It's not too late to make it up to you now. The azure-robed man thought for a moment, and then he nodded. Yi Xian immediately said, Material compensation. The azure-robed man was speechless. Su Mu was dumbfounded. Are these father and son really father and son? Su Mu's expression was extremely unsightly. He naturally wanted to flee, but he didn't dare. He knew that he would definitely die if he moved. The azure-robed man was truly too terrifying. In the distance, the azure-robed man suddenly passed the box in his hand to Yi Xian. This is for you. Yi Xian blinked. What is it? The azure-robed man laughed heartily. A very good thing. It's very suitable for you. Of course, it'll be suitable for you in the future as well. Yi Xian nodded. He was looking forward to it. After all, his father was very generous this time. Yi Xian was about to open the box when he seemed to have thought of something. He looked at the azure-robed man and smiled. Father, if you're free in the future, come visit me more often and bring something over. It'll be beneficial to our relationship. The azure-robed man's face instantly darkened. Chapter 23:35. The green-clothed man shook his head with a smile when he saw the excitement on Yi Xian's face. At this moment, he suddenly realized that this fellow was still like a child. Of course, he felt even more guilty and ashamed. He really had neglected Yi Xian earlier. It wasn't wrong to leave him alone, but it shouldn't be done completely. Father and son still needed to communicate. Leaving him alone was equivalent to letting the little fellow walk the same path he had once taken, and he knew very well what it felt like to not have a father. As if he'd thought of something, the green-clothed man turned to look at Xiantian. Xiantian's face was pale, and he'd lost all will to resist. How could he resist? This green-clothed man killed ancient god realm experts like he was slaughtering chickens, so how could he resist? Xiantian hesitated for a moment and said, Can I surrender? In the end, he didn't choose to be stubborn. Stubbornness was tantamount to death. He didn't want to die right now, and perhaps he would have a chance to live if he surrendered. The green-clothed man grinned, and then he turned to look at Yi Xian. You decide. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Xiantian, do you want to live? Xiantian immediately bowed deeply. Please spare my life, young Master Yi. Dignity? Backbone? Living was the best. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, What do I get from sparing your life? Xiantian was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, wait a moment. As he spoke, he took out a transmission talisman and crushed it. It didn't take long for an old man at the ancient god realm to appear here, and he hurriedly brought a spatial ring over to Xiantian. Xiantian took the spatial ring, and then he took out another spatial ring and passed both of them respectfully to Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at the spatial rings, and there were a total of 80 million universe veins within them. Besides that, there were some divine treasures. Xiantian said respectfully, Young Master Yi, all the treasures of my profound god world are in here. Yi Xian put the spatial rings away and grinned, All right. Xiantian hesitated for a moment and said, Young Master Yi, are you really not going to kill me? Yi Xian nodded, No. Xiantian was puzzled. Why? Yi Xian asked, Do you want me to kill you? Xiantian quickly said, Of course not. As he spoke, he quickly bowed deeply. Thank you, young Master Yi, for sparing my life. Yi Xian glanced at Xiantian and smiled. He naturally had his reasons for not killing Xiantian. If he kept him alive, he would have more opportunities to act tough in the future. Revenge? He wasn't afraid at all. After seeing his father's terrifying strength, if the other party still wanted to take revenge, then he could only give him a thumbs up. Even if Tianyi was reborn, he wouldn't do such a stupid thing. At this moment, as if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly looked at the green-clothed man and said, "Dad, let's have a spar. Let's exchange pointers." The green-clothed man was slightly startled, and then he smiled and said, "Are you sure?" Yi Xian nodded. He had always wanted to have a real fight. Of course, he also wanted to test his father's strength. He wanted to see how big the gap between him and his father was. The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Sure." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "You have to lower your cultivation level." The green-clothed man shook his head and said, "I don't have a cultivation level." Yi Xian was speechless. The green-clothed man smiled and said, "But don't worry. This avatar will seal a portion of its strength to reach your current level." Yi Xian nodded and said, "All right. I'll heal my injuries first." As he spoke, he sat down cross-legged and was about to heal his injuries. Meanwhile, the green-clothed man suddenly opened his palm and an elixir floated slowly to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was curious and asked, "What's this?" The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Just eat it. Why ask so many questions?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he consumed it. As soon as he did, a terrifying energy suddenly swept out from his body. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian's soul recovered at an extremely terrifying speed. In less than a few breaths of time, his soul had completely recovered. Moreover, his body was swiftly being reconstructed. In less than 10 breaths of time, Yi Xian's soul and body had completely recovered, and his condition was even better than when he was at his peak. Yi Xian was stunned. Su Mu and Xiantian were stunned as well. He recovered just like that? Yi Xian looked at the green-clothed man in disbelief and said, "Dad, what kind of elixir is this?" The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Bao, a refine the ancient god elixir." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Can you give me a few more? I'll keep them as a backup." The green-clothed man laughed and was about to refuse, but he seemed to have thought of something and shook his head with a smile. After that, he took out a white jade bottle and passed it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly took the white jade bottle and there were 5 ancient god elixirs within it. Yi Xian grinned and said, "Dad, you're a good friend." The green-clothed man roared with laughter. Yi Xian opened his palm, and then a strand of sword intent suddenly condensed into a sword that floated above his palm. Yi Xian gazed at the green-clothed man and said, "Dad, bring it on." The green-clothed man nodded and said, "You attack first." Yi Xian didn't waste his breath at all and just stabbed with his sword. The energy of the mortal world and sword intent of the mortal world. He'd utilized his full strength in this strike. His dad wasn't someone that Xiantian and the others could compare to. Even if it was only a clone and a portion of his strength was sealed. The green-clothed man's expression was calm as water when facing this terrifying strike from Yi Xian, and he suddenly stabbed with his sword when Yi Xian's sword arrived in front of him. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated over 30 kilometers away along with his sword. When he stopped, the sword in his hand that was condensed from sword intent was instantly shattered and obliterated. Yi Xian was stunned. Was his human sword principle that weak? The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Your sword principle isn't bad, but do you know what's the biggest flaw of your sword principle?" Yi Xian looked at the green-clothed man and said, "Please enlighten me, Dad." The green-clothed man nodded and said, "The sword principle is a kind of belief." "What is your belief?" "The human world, the secular world of mortals. The secular world of mortals is your foundation, but you've experienced too little. You haven't fully comprehended the emotions and desires of the human world. Moreover, it's not enough to comprehend the emotions and desires of the human world. Your sword principle needs to encompass all things in the universe, and to achieve this, it's not something that can be achieved in a short period of time. Moreover, at this point, he paused for a moment and said, "You have another flaw, and it should be your biggest flaw right now." Yi Xian quickly asked, "What flaw?" The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Your sword principle is the sword principle of the human world, and you need the support of the human world's power. However, your human world's power is very weak now. Do you know why?" Yi Xian shook his head. The man in green said, "Because there are very, very few people who believe in you." Yi Xian frowned. "Faith?" The blue-clothed man nodded. "That's faith. The faith of all living beings is the power of your world." Yi Xian frowned. The azure-robed man smiled and said, "Don't you think it's a bit dependent on external forces? Or are you saying that you don't like to play tricks?" Yi Xian nodded. "Both." The green-robed man shook his head. "Your thinking is wrong." Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man, and the green-robed man said softly, "What was your original intention in establishing the academy?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "To establish a heart for the universe, to establish a life for all living beings, to continue learning for the saints of the past, to establish peace for all ages." The azure-robed man nodded. "If you can really do what you said, then all the living beings in this endless universe will have faith in you. The more sincere their faith is, the stronger your human realm sword Dao will be." Of course, the premise was that what you did was sincere from the heart, without the slightest bit of falsehood. You have feelings for everything. You have feelings for the world and the universe. All the living beings in the universe will naturally allow you to comprehend greater power. As he spoke, he paused for a moment and said, "The sword Dao of the mortal world is based on the living beings of the world. Your sword Dao is even more difficult to traverse than our sword Dao. Because your sword Dao is too ambitious. Changing the world is much harder than destroying it. Even Father and Tianming can't change the world because the hardest thing to change is the human heart. If you want to change the universe, you have to change their thoughts and change their hearts. Your path will be harder than ours." Yi Xian looked straight at the green-robed man. "What if I succeed?" The green-robed man suddenly held his sword and gently knocked on Yi Xian's head. "You can't think like that." Yi Xian was stunned. The green-robed man asked, "You have to establish a heart for the universe, establish a life for all living beings, continue learning for the saints of the past, and establish peace for all ages. Are you thinking of this for all living beings in this universe? Or do you want to use all living beings to become stronger?" Yi Xian was stunned. The green-robed man said with a smile, "We swordsmen cultivate our hearts." "Why do we cultivate our hearts?" "Because the human heart is fickle, so we need to constantly cultivate our hearts and then subdue them. The original intention of your sword Dao is to change this boundless universe, so go ahead and do it. However, if you do it with a selfish heart, it's not impossible, but it'll be different. Because to a certain extent, you're making use of all living things in this boundless universe. When that time comes, you will really be fooling them. Moreover, with this mentality, if there is a conflict between you and all living beings in the universe in the future, you will not hesitate to sacrifice this endless universe to help yourself." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "I understand." The green-robed man said with a smile, "Our original intention does not change. This is what we swordsmen always say, but it's actually very difficult to do it." As he said that, he gently patted Yi Xian's shoulder. "You're already doing very well now. You're no longer impetuous and vicious, and you know how to do things slowly. Compared to before, you're much, much better. What you need now is more experience, then settle yourself, and finally change the entire universe." After a long silence, Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." The green-robed man said with a smile, "It's good that you understand." Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man and said in a deep voice, "Father, I know that it's very difficult to change the universe, but I will do my best. One day, I will achieve what I said and make this universe different." The green-robed man nodded. He gently rubbed Yi Xian's head and said with a smile, "Just do it, don't worry too much. Your father will always be behind you." Xian Tian was speechless. P.S. If I didn't keep you in suspense today, would you have praised me? Chapter 23:36. A backer? Yi Xian was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he smiled. Father, thank you. The green-clothed man roared with laughter. There's no need for thanks between father and son. As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said, I have to go. Yi Xian was quite curious. Father, where are you and big brother right now? The green-clothed man thought for a moment and said, It's very far away. With your current strength, you can't come into contact with that place. But I believe that it won't take long for you to get there. As he spoke, he suddenly opened his palm, and a spatial ring appeared there. The spatial ring was slightly strange. It was shaped like a sword, and it was blood red. The green-clothed man passed the spatial ring to Yi Xian. For you. Yi Xian took the spatial ring and was quite curious. What's this? The green-clothed man smiled. A keepsake. You'll need it in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, his clone gradually became illusory. Yi Xian spoke solemnly. Father, are you leaving? The green-clothed man nodded, and then he seemed to have thought of something. He opened his palm, and the sword that he'd given to Yi Xian appeared in his hand. He smiled. Looks like you haven't noticed what's special about this sword. No, the current you basically doesn't need to use external objects anymore. However, there's no need to intentionally avoid using external objects. As he spoke, he pressed his fingers together and flicked the sword lightly. Bang! The sword trembled violently. In the next moment, a terrifying ray of light suddenly erupted from the sword. The green-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian. Blood! Yi Xian was stunned, and then he flicked his finger and a drop of blood essence floated onto the sword. As soon as the drop of blood came into contact with the sword, the entire sword instantly seemed as if it had come alive, and it emanated an extremely terrifying sword howl. Immediately after that, the entire sword transformed into a blood-red sword. Yi Xian was astounded. This? The azure-robed man smiled and said, Zongjin, a sword that once slaughtered countless creatures. Later on, when I encountered it, I sealed it. I originally thought that you would be able to awaken it, but I didn't expect that you've been reading every day recently, and your personality has changed greatly. This sword has no feelings for you. As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. Yi Xian glanced at the blood-red sword in the green-robed man's hand and shook his head with a smile. He did not expect this ordinary-looking sword to be a sword of slaughter. The green-robed man handed the sword to Yi Xian. I've still sealed part of this sword's power. If you want to unseal it in the future, it's up to you. Previously, I didn't dare to unseal it for you because I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to control it. But now, your temperament has improved a lot. You should have no problem facing this sword. Yi Xian blinked. Is this sword strong? The green-robed man laughed and said, If you activate your bloodline and use this sword, you will be pleasantly surprised. Yi Xian smiled and said, All right. As soon as he finished speaking, he took the burial sword. As soon as the burial sword came into contact with it, Yi Xian's body instantly trembled. In the next moment, a boundless sea of blood actually appeared in his mind. At the same time, strands of terrifying murderous intent and evil qi instantly surged into his sea of consciousness. Yi Xian frowned slightly. In the next moment, he suddenly opened his eyes, and there was a sea of blood in his eyes. The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Gradually, the sea of blood in Yi Xian's eyes faded away, and Yi Xian's expression returned to normal. He had suppressed the evil qi and murderous intent. The green-robed man grinned. All right. Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man. Father, take care. The green-robed man laughed heartily. Little fellow, do your best. You did well this time. As he laughed heartily, the green-robed man vanished completely. Shen Tian's expression instantly eased up when he saw the green-robed man vanish. Because the pressure he felt from the green-robed man was truly too strong. As soon as he left, he instantly felt as if a few 100,000 mountains had moved away from him. Meanwhile, Su Mu walked over slowly to Yi Xian, and he passed the Daoist to Yi Xian and said respectfully, Young Master Yi, please keep it well. Yi Xian took the Daoist and smiled. Did you comprehend anything? Su Mu hurriedly nodded. it's quite deep. It won't take long for me to attain the ancient god realm. Of course, the precondition is that I have money. Yi Xian blinked. How much money? Su Mu hesitated for a moment and said, at least 50 million universe veins, and it might even be more. 50 million universe veins? A wisp of bitterness arose on the corners of Su Mu's mouth when he spoke up to this point. The amount of money required to advance from the ancient god realm to the ancient god realm was truly too terrifying. It was terrifying to the point that even an expert like him felt slightly helpless. I can't just rob someone, right? Even if I want to rob someone, I have to rob a great power. However, practically every great power has an ancient god realm expert, so robbing them is equivalent to robbing with one's life. If I don't rob someone and rely on myself to slowly earn it, how long would that take? That's normal. After all, ancient god realm experts are extremely rare now. Besides money, great fortuitous encounters are required as well. He already has great fortuitous encounters, and what he lacks now is money. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and a spatial ring slowly floated over to Su Mu. There were exactly 50 million universe veins within the spatial ring. Su Mu was stunned. Young Master Yi, what's this? Yi Xian smiled. I won't be bashful anymore. I've established an academy, and it's currently lacking manpower. I want to recruit you to be a revered elder of my Guanxian Academy. You won't be involved in the academy's affairs and will only be tasked with protecting it. Are you willing? Su Mu immediately bowed deeply. I'm willing. Of course he was willing. If he could hug onto Yi Xian's thigh, then meteoric success would be just around the corner. No, he was already meteoric success. Yi Xian smiled and said, go cultivate first. Come find me after you've broken through. Su Mu bowed deeply again. Definitely. After he finished speaking, he left. Yi Xian fell silent. His father gave him 100 million universe veins earlier, along with the 80 million that Xiantian gave him, and the tens of millions he already had. He had around 200 million universe veins. But now, he had to give away 50 million at once. Needless to say, it was quite painful. However, if he could obtain an ancient god realm expert, then it would be extremely worth it. Currently, ancient god realm experts were extremely rare, and he would be more at ease if Guanxian Academy had an ancient god realm expert protecting it. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at Xiantian. Xiantian's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly bowed. Young Master Yi, what instructions do you have for me? Yi Xian smiled. I don't have any instructions. You can leave. Xiantian was stunned, and then he bowed slightly and vanished on the spot. No one knew what Yi Xian was thinking as he watched Xiantian vanish into the distance. After a while, Yi Xian turned and left. The people outside didn't know what happened in the starry sky. So many people were still frantically looking for Yi Xian. Xiantian Divine Realm. After Xiantian returned to Xiantian Divine Realm, he locked himself in his room. Fear. Even now, he still felt fear. The green-clothed man had instantly annihilated 2 ancient god realm experts in an instant with ease. Moreover, it was only a clone of his. This was truly unbelievable. At this moment, he finally recognized himself. Was the ancient god realm very strong? Before this, he felt that it was very, very strong, an existence at the top of the pyramid of the world. But now, he felt that the ancient god realm was just a fart. Not even a fart. At this moment, an elder appeared at the door and said excitedly, Realm Lord, we have found news of Yi Xian. Yi Xian has returned to the Xingu clan. Our people have already gone to the Xingu clan to kill him. Suddenly, the entire hall exploded into pieces, and the old man who spoke was blasted thousands of meters away. After Xiantian came out, he looked at the elder and said with a trembling voice, Damn it, get them back. The elder was stunned. At this moment, Xiantian suddenly roared, Where did they go? Tell me or I will kill you. The elder pointed to the right, and Xiantian disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, the end of the horizon cracked, and a voice suddenly came from afar. Pass down my order, no one from the Xiantian divine realm is allowed to cause trouble for young Master Yi. Anyone who disobeys will be killed. The elder. When Yi Xian returned to the Xingu clan, he was stunned when he saw Gu Han. Yi Xian smiled and said, "You didn't expect me to come back alive, did you?" Gu Han nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian smiled, "I am here to bid farewell to you. I am going back to Guanxian Academy." Gu Han glanced at Yi Xian, "All right." The current her naturally did not dare to let Yi Xian represent the Xingu clan to compete with the Imperial Wilderness Celestial clan. Not to mention the people behind Yi Xian's current strength was not something the immortal ancient Celestial clan could resist. Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and Daoist slowly floated to Gu Han. "Hold the brush." Gu Han was stunned, and then she held the brush. In the next moment, she was directly raised to the ancient god realm by Daoist. Gu Han's pupils shrank, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Yi Xian said, "Feel it carefully." Gu Han slowly closed her eyes. About an hour later, Gu Han opened her eyes. Yi Xian opened his palm, and Daoist flew back into his hand. He smiled, "Patriarch, thank you for saving me that day. Today we are even. See you again." With that he turned and left. Gu Han suddenly said, "It can also be raised to the ancient god realm, right?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." With that he disappeared into the starry sky. Gu Han was stunned. She actually still wanted to experience the ancient god realm because she knew that it was a chance to change her fate. Unfortunately, she could not speak. Just as Yi Xian said, she helped Yi Xian once, and Yi Xian helped her once, so they were even. At this moment, she suddenly regretted it. If she did not leave that day, after a long time, Gu Han sighed and turned to leave. In a certain corner, an unremarkable little girl looked at the disappearing sword light, and her eyes gradually turned from blank to determined. After a long time, she softly said, "Guanxian Academy. Imperial Wilderness Celestial Clan." An old man quickly walked into the hall and said excitedly, "Patriarch, we have found Yi Xian. Yi Xian has just left the Xingu clan." Diyuan was silent for a moment and said, "Inform the profound god world immediately." With that, he slowly closed his eyes. "Little friend Yi, you cannot blame me." Chapter 2337. Yi Xian didn't return to the Guanxuan Academy in the world of gods. Instead, he went to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion in the Immortal world. When Yi Xian arrived, the president of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, Su Tian, hurriedly came out to welcome him. He bowed deeply to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi." Others didn't know what had happened, but he knew that two ancient god realm experts had fallen in the profound god world. But Yi Xian was still alive. Even an idiot would know what was going on. Yi Xian smiled. "Find me a place to cultivate. I'm going into closed-door cultivation." Su Tian hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, follow me." As he spoke, he brought Yi Xian to an unknown starry sky. Su Tian glanced around and said, "Young Master Yi, this is the best place to cultivate. It's extremely quiet." Yi Xian nodded. Su Tian bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi, feel free to let me know if you need anything." As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly retreated. After Su Tian left, Yi Xian glanced around before sitting down cross-legged. He opened his palm, and the ancient book that his father gave him appeared in his hand. A sword technique that father and big brother created together for me? Needless to say, Yi Xian was extremely curious. As soon as Yi Xian opened the ancient book, a ray of sword light suddenly shot into the space between his brows. Bang! In an instant, countless pieces of information surged into Yi Xian's mind. Instant invincibility. Once it's executed, I'll immediately escape from the current universe. In an instant, I'll be immune to all the energy of the universe. Fate and karma can't be attached to me, and I'll devour all Grand Dao techniques. With a single thought, I'll be able to lock the soul with a single sword strike. In this instant, I'm invincible. In this instant, I'm invincible? Yi Xian was stunned. In next to no time, Yi Xian's blood was boiling. Awesome. At this moment he just wanted to roar. Once this sword technique was executed, he would be able to escape from the current universe. Karma and fate couldn't be attached to him, and he would devour all Grand Dao techniques. Yi Xian was extremely excited. This was even more ferocious than Void Slash. No wonder his father and big brother worked together to create it for him. One word, ferocious. Two words, so fierce. Without any nonsense, Yi Xian immediately began his research. But very soon he became numb, because he discovered that cultivating this sword skill required an extremely large amount of money, because cultivating this sword skill required the support of an enormous amount of spiritual energy, because only with sufficient spiritual energy would he be able to break through the current universe and jump out. How much spiritual energy was needed? He had just burned 1,000,000 universe veins, but it was like a stone falling into the ocean. There was no movement at all. It wasn't enough. Holy shit! Yi Xian was stunned. Yi Xian was naturally unwilling and continued to burn his universe veins. He held the sword in his right hand and closed his eyes. His heart sutra circulated and countless universe veins burned around him. 2,000,000, 3,000,000, 4,000,000, 6,000,000. When he burned to 10,000,000 universe veins, the sword in his hand suddenly trembled slightly. There was movement. Yi Xian was overjoyed, and he hurriedly circulated the instant of invincibility. In next to no time, a faint sword light appeared around his body, and right at this moment, the universe veins that he had ignited were completely absorbed by his sword. Yi Xian quickly continued to burn his universe veins. At this moment he couldn't care about anything else. He just wanted to test the power of this sword. Yi Xian crazily burned his universe veins. Under the support of endless universe veins, the sword in Yi Xian's hand trembled violently. At the same time, countless tiny sword lights appeared on his body. These sword lights were like blood vessels. Yi Xian suddenly raised the sword in his hand. At this moment, those tiny sword lights suddenly gathered towards his arm. Soon, countless tiny sword lights followed his arm and entered the sword in his hand. At this moment, he needed even more spiritual energy. Yi Xian didn't hesitate and continued to burn his universe veins. About 15 minutes later, Yi Xian suddenly stabbed forward with his sword and roared, "Open!" Boom! As the sword stabbed out, the space-time in front of him suddenly split apart. Yi Xian's entire body entered it. In the next moment, he appeared in a space of nothingness. Yi Xian was stunned. The space he was in was nothingness. It wasn't the river of time or the river of time and space. It was like it was independent of the universe. Moreover, he could see the universe he had entered from. Not only that, but from his position, the universe he was in was transparent and illusory. Yi Xian looked at his body. At this moment, there was a thin layer of sword light on his body. It was like scales, extremely dazzling. Invincible? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then he took out the Daoist and waved it at his body. The tip of the brush slashed onto his body. Boom! The tip of the brush shattered and he was completely fine. Yi Xian was stunned. In the next moment he laughed crazily. He was truly invincible. At this moment he was truly an invincible existence. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly looked at the existing universe outside. He slowly closed his eyes and in the next moment he suddenly pulled out his sword. In that existing universe, 4 afterimages appeared in one place. In the next moment, the 4 afterimages pulled out their swords and slashed. The 4 sword lights converged at one point. Boom! In an instant, that existing universe's starry sky was instantly destroyed. This wasn't the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that the force was too strong. The powerful force instantly swept out for millions of miles. In an instant, the endless starry sky above the entire God's world was directly wiped out. Millions of miles of starry sky was destroyed by a single sword. Moreover, the remaining force continuously shook and cracked the starry sky that was millions of miles away. In an instant, it affected more than a dozen universes. At this moment, countless experts were shocked. Which big shot used the sword? Countless people began to investigate, but they found nothing. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly returned to the existing universe. When he returned to the existing universe, his entire body went limp like a puddle of mud. He directly collapsed. After unleashing that sword strike, he immediately collapsed. The power of that sword was far, far stronger than Daoist's. His current body wasn't enough to completely withstand it. At this moment, Su Tian appeared. When he saw Yi Xian, Su Tian was shocked. He hurriedly walked in front of Yi Xian and said in a trembling voice, "Young Master Yi, do." Yi Xian smiled slightly. "It's fine. I'll rest for a while." After saying that, he just lay down and closed his eyes to rest. He didn't use the medicinal pill that his father gave him. That medicinal pill was too terrifying. It was better to save it for a critical moment in the future. After all, there were only 5 of them. If he used one, there would be one less. After all, his father didn't come every time. Next to him, Su Tian looked at Yi Xian with a face full of shock. He seriously suspected that the sudden wiping out of this part of the starry sky was done by this young Master Yi in front of him. However, was this young Master Yi only at the see-through realm? How could he have such terrifying strength? Su Tian was puzzled. Around 2 hours later, Yi Xian's face finally looked much better. He sat up and smiled bitterly. Needless to say, that sword strike was truly too terrifying. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian hurriedly looked at his spatial ring. When he saw the universe veins in his spatial ring, he was stunned. 30 million universe veins were missing. 30 million. Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. In order to execute that sword strike, he'd actually burned 30 million universe veins. Why is it like Qin Guan's sword? Does it rely on recharging? He also thought of something else. When he executed that sword skill just now, he didn't use the power of bloodline, world sword intent, and world power. Otherwise, its power might be even more terrifying. Besides that, he didn't display its true power just now. After all, he was just testing it and didn't use his full strength. In short, that sword strike was quite invincible. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Needless to say, his father was really considerate this time. He gave him money and a sword skill. And a box. With that thought in mind, Yi Xian hurriedly took out the box and sized it up. It was an ordinary box, but he knew that the thing inside was definitely not ordinary. Yi Xian looked at Su Tian, and Su Tian hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, please go ahead. I'll take my leave." With that, he turned around and left. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "What happened just now? Keep it a secret, understand?" Su Tian was stunned. In the next moment, his expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, "Of course." With that, he left. Outside, Su Tian's face was filled with disbelief. The commotion just now was really caused by young Master Yi. It was simply outrageous. Profound God World. Xian Tian sat in the main hall, and there were a few elders kneeling in front of him. They were the elders who had gone after Yi Xian, and he'd just caught them. Needless to say, Xian Tian was really relieved. If he hadn't caught them, and they'd caught up with Yi Xian, wouldn't that be the end of him? In the hall, the few people kneeling were confused. At this moment, Xian Tian suddenly said, "Remember, from today onwards, don't look for young Master Yi. If you meet him, turn around and leave. If you can't avoid it, be more respectful and treat him like your own father." The few of them were puzzled. Xian Tian said angrily, "Don't ask why, just do as I say. It's for your own good. Leave now." The few of them did not dare to say anything else, and they left in a daze. In the hall, Xian Tian leaned against the chair behind him with his eyes closed. He had been living in fear for the past few days, and the green-robed man would appear in his mind every now and then. At this moment, an elder suddenly appeared in the hall, and the elder bowed slightly. "Realm Lord Diyuan, the clan leader of the Heavenly Emperor Wilderness God Tribe, requests an audience." Xian Tian frowned. "Heavenly Emperor Wilderness God Tribe? What does he want?" The elder said in a deep voice. "He said he has something important to report." "Important?" Xian Tian nodded. "Let him in." The elder left, and not long after, Diyuan walked into the hall. Diyuan bowed slightly to Xiantian, and then he went straight to the point. Realm Lord Xiantian, let me first say that the Heavenly Emperor Wilderness God tribe has nothing to do with Yi Xian, nothing at all. Xiantian looked at Diyuan without saying a word. Diyuan continued, Realm Lord Xiantian, I just found Yi Xian's whereabouts. After he left the ancient Immortal clan, he went directly to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. I've already sent people to surround him, and Realm Lord Xiantian can head there immediately. The Heavenly Emperor Wilderness God tribe is willing to cooperate fully with Realm Lord Xiantian to capture Yi Xian. Xiantian's legs suddenly felt weak. P.S. I firmly believe that those readers who scold me will get tired of scolding me. Also, why scold me? Without love, how could there be hatred? If they didn't like me, they wouldn't waste time scolding me. When I thought about this, I realized that when I saw those readers scolding me, I wasn't angry at all. Instead, I felt a trace of joy and pride. Look, they scolded me because they liked my book. Life was difficult, and there were many times when one had to look at a problem from a different perspective. Perhaps the result would be different. Chapter 23:38. Inside the hall, Xiantian looked at Diyuan silently. Diyuan furrowed his brows when he saw that Xiantian wasn't speaking. Suddenly, he sensed that something was wrong with the atmosphere and he raised his guard. Diyuan hesitated for a moment before he said, Realm Lord? Xiantian suddenly said, You said that you have nothing to do with that young Master Yi? Diyuan hurriedly nodded. That's right. My Imperial Desolate Divine Clan has nothing to do with him. My Imperial Desolate Divine Clan is willing to help the profound world. At this point, he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression suddenly changed drastically. Young Master Yi? This Mystic Sky Realm Lord addressed Yi Xian as Young Master Yi? Right at this moment, Xiantian spoke abruptly, It's fine as long as they aren't related at all. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly flipped his right hand and pressed it down. In the distance, Diyuan's expression changed drastically, and he blocked with both hands. Boom! Diyuan's physical body was shattered, and his soul was gripped tightly by an invisible hand. Diyuan stared at Xiantian in disbelief. Realm Lord Xiantian, why are you doing this? Xiantian stared at Diyuan and mocked, You think you're so smart. Diyuan spoke in a heavy voice, Mystic Heaven Realm Lord, if you want to kill me, can you let me die knowing the reason behind it? Xiantian was expressionless. Do you know who Young Master Yi is? Young Master Yi. Hearing these two words, Diyuan was stunned. Xiantian glared at Diyuan and said angrily, Someone I cannot afford to offend. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve. Boom! Diyuan's soul was instantly erased. Xiantian looked coldly at the spot where Diyuan had disappeared. Idiot! Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Yi Xian opened the box. Inside was a small set of armor. It was dark gold in color and about the size of a palm. It emitted a faint light, and it was glossy and mysterious. Seeing this palm-sized armor, Yi Xian frowned. Armor? At this moment, the black armor suddenly transformed into a black light and surged into his glabella. Boom! In an instant, Yi Xian's eyes widened, and two rays of blood-red light shot out from his eyes. The two beams of bloody light pierced through the river of stars and disappeared into the depths of the boundless starry sky. At the same time, Yi Xian's whole body trembled violently, and the mad demon bloodline in his body was directly activated at this moment. Moreover, the burial sword in his hand was actually trembling violently at this moment as if it was about to be completely activated. Yi Xian was horrified. What the hell? Yi Xian hurriedly began to suppress the power of the bloodline in his body, but he soon discovered that thin scales had appeared all over his body, and on these scales, there was dark blood flowing slowly. His mad demon bloodline was actually unable to suppress this dark blood. Arya's bloodline. At this moment Yi Xian was certain. This armor must have been made from the scales shed by Arya, and in this armor, there was Arya's blood. Thinking of this, Yi Xian was instantly excited. How terrifying was Arya's armor! Although this armor was Arya's scales after being eliminated, it was absolutely terrifying. Yi Xian looked at the bloodline contained in the armor on his body and was shocked. No wonder his bloodline could not suppress the power of this bloodline, so it turned out that it was Arya's bloodline. He had to admit that Arya's bloodline was a bit fierce. This was the first time he saw the mad demon bloodline unable to suppress other bloodlines. However, it should be because of him. After all, his mad demon bloodline did not improve much. If it was his father's bloodline, it would definitely be different. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts, and then slowly began to suppress his mad demon bloodline. Under his suppression, the mad demon bloodline gradually calmed down, and Arya's bloodline gradually merged into the armor, and the burial sword also returned to normal. Yi Xian touched the armor on his body, and the first feeling he had was that it was thick. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then took out the Daoist, and then directly waved the brush on his body. Boom! The tip of the brush slashed out. Boom! A ray of light erupted from Yi Xian's chest, but he was completely unharmed. Nothing happened. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was stunned at first, and then he laughed. With Arya's armor and his instant invincible sword technique, it would be difficult for him to die. Now, he really wanted to shout, "I'm invincible under 3 swords." However, he still calmed down. I can't shout randomly. In the past, I was often slapped in the face, and I usually can't be handsome for more than 3 days. Although I'm invincible now, I still have to keep a low profile. Yi Xian took a deep breath, and then with a thought, the armor on his body quietly merged into his body. Yi Xian grinned. This time, Dad is a bit like my real father. The man in green was speechless. Yi Xian put away the Daoist, then glanced at the scene, smiled slightly, and then turned to leave. It had to be said that the harvest this time was very, very great. After coming out of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Yi Xian saw Su Tian, and Su Tian quickly bowed respectfully. "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled. "President Su Tian, I'm leaving." Su Tian smiled. "Welcome young Master Yi next time." Yi Xian nodded. "Take care." With that, he rode on his sword and disappeared into the end of the starry sky. Su Tian looked up at the horizon and said softly, "Diyuan's celestial clan is gone." He had already received the news of Diyuan's death, and with Diyuan's death, there was no doubt that the Diyuan celestial clan would be swallowed by the surrounding forces. Su Tian sighed softly. This Diyuan, in the end, still gambled wrong. Yi Xian did not directly return to Universe of Gods, but went to Celestial Treasure World. When he arrived at Celestial Treasure City, he was stunned. At the entrance of Celestial Treasure City, there were hundreds of bloody heads. What happened? Yi Xian frowned slightly. At this moment, Celestial Treasure City's president Xiao Lan appeared in front of Yi Xian, and upon seeing Yi Xian, Xiao Lan quickly bowed. "Young Master Yi." His attitude was even more respectful than before. Yi Xian pointed at those heads. "These are?" Xiao Lan said solemnly, "They are all the heads of Mystic Sky Divine Realms experts." Yi Xian was slightly startled, then said, "Mystic Sky Divine Realm?" Xiao Lan nodded. "I contacted the Pavilion Master previously, but he did not come, but he sent someone." Then all the heads of Mystic Sky Divine Realms experts of Grotto Profound Realm and above are all placed here. Qingguan. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He had to say, although Qingguan's temper was extremely good, the prerequisite was not to provoke her, especially not to break the rules she set. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "What about Mystic Sky?" Xiao Lan bowed deeply. The Pavilion Master said that since young Master Yi didn't kill him, then there must be a deeper meaning behind it. So, give young Master Yi face, not him. Give me face. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he smiled. Little Guan is really considerate. Little Guan. Xiao Lan's eyelids instantly twitched when he heard this. This young Master Ye's relationship with the Pavilion Master really isn't ordinary. Yi Xian smiled. Are you still holding the auction? Xiao Lan nodded. Yes. Yi Xian asked, when? Xiao Lan hesitated. He paused for a moment, then said, "When does young Master Yi think is suitable?" Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he said with a smile, "Well, you can make your own arrangements." Xiaolon grinned, "It's convenient for young Master Yi." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, "I don't have that much money." Xiaolon glanced at the surroundings, and then he said, "Young Master Yi, do you have any thoughts about the Dao God's ruins?" Yi Xian nodded. Xiaolon said in a low voice, "Young Master Yi, we did some research earlier and discovered that no power can buy this Dao God's ruins. Thus, the pavilion master thought of a way, and that is to let everyone buy it together." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Group purchase?" Xiaolon nodded. "Yes. A few powers will buy it together and then share this ruin together." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Are the other powers willing?" Xiaolon nodded, "I'm willing. That's because there isn't a single force that can monopolize these ruins." As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said, "Young Master Yi, when the time comes, we'll directly put you on the list, and you won't have to pay any fees." Yi Xian blinked. "When?" Xiaolon smiled lightly, "We're all on the same side, what's wrong with that?" Yi Xian hurriedly said, "President Xiaolon is considerate. Yi Xian will never forget this favor." Hearing this, Xiaolon was overjoyed. "Young Master Yi is too polite." Saying so, he made an inviting gesture. "Young Master Yi, please enter the pavilion. When the auction is over, I'll inform you." Yi Xian nodded, "All right." Under Xiaolan's lead, Yi Xian arrived at the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, and Xiaolon arranged for him to stay in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's highest standard room. In the starry sky, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. Cultivating. His harvest from the battle with Black Heaven's group was bountiful. That was especially true during his battle with Xian Mu. He had learned many things during that exchange. Most importantly, he had used the Daoist to reach the ancient god realm. Now, his goal was to break through to the ancient god realm, because he felt that the time was right. In the starry sky, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. With the Daoist's help, he once again reached the ancient god realm. He carefully comprehended, and at the same time, he began to burn his universe veins. Breaking through to the next realm required a lot of universe veins. Fortunately, he had the 100 million from his father and 80 million from Black Heaven, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to continue cultivating. Just like this, time passed day by day. Roughly 3 days later, Yi Xian's aura suddenly returned to the Grotto Mystic Realm, but very quickly, he advanced from the Grotto Mystic Realm to the Ancient God Realm. This time, his aura gradually stabilized. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. His palms opened, and in an instant, more than 1,000 swords condensed from sword intent appeared around him. Ancient God Realm. However, Yi Xian was not the least bit happy. On the contrary, his brows were tightly locked together, because he discovered that his ancient god realm was very superficial, not stable at all. Although it was the ancient god realm, it was not much different from the demigod realm. Yi Xian fell silent. He knew that he had been a little too impatient. Even with the Daoist's help, this realm was not something that could be easily broken through. He was too impatient. Yi Xian took a deep breath. Right now, he had to slowly stabilize his realm, and it might take a long time. At this time, Xiaolon suddenly appeared not far from Yi Xian. Xiaolon slightly bowed. "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled. "What's the matter?" Xiaolon nodded. "Young Master Yi, the auction has ended. According to the agreement, you will set off for the Dao God ruins together." Dao God ruins? Chapter 2339. The auction had ended. Yi Xian nodded slightly and stood up. Under Xiaolan's lead, he arrived at a large hall. At this moment, there were already 3 people gathered in the hall, 2 men and 1 woman, all of them relatively young. So young? Yi Xian was slightly stunned. When the 2 men and 1 woman saw Yi Xian, they glanced at him, then retracted their gazes. At this moment, Xiaolan suddenly said, "The 4 of you, this time, only the 4 of you know about the Dao God's secret realm. In other words, the four of you will share the Dao God's secret realm. As for what you can obtain from it, it will depend on your own luck. After saying that, he glanced at Yi Xian, then quietly retreated. In the hall, the four of them were silent. Yi Xian glanced at the three of them. The three of them sat a little far away and did not communicate with each other. It was obvious that the three of them did not know each other. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Everyone, there's no need to be so serious. Next, we might have to work together. Introduce yourselves. I'll go first. My name is Yi Xian, and I'm from the universe of gods. The three of them glanced at Yi Xian, but still did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled. The three of you, with all due respect, this kind of mentality is not good. We haven't even reached the Dao God ruins yet, and you've already started to suspect each other. It can be imagined that once we reach the Dao God ruins, we will definitely fight. After saying that, he paused for a moment, then said, Is there no danger in the Dao God ruins? The three of them remained silent. Yi Xian smiled. Moreover, do you all have the confidence to kill the other three? The three of them remained silent. Yi Xian continued, I think a win-win cooperation is better than being guarded against and suspicious of each other. What do you think? At this moment, the man on the left suddenly said, Qin Yu. The man on the right also said, Zhu Fan. The woman in the middle looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Xiao Yuer. Yi Xian smiled, let's set off for the Dao God ruins. After he finished speaking, the three of them arrived in the starry sky. Xiao Lan appeared in front of Yi Xian once more. Behind him was a starship. Xiao Lan smiled lightly, the four of you, the journey to the Dao God ruins is long, so my immortal treasure pavilion has prepared a starship for all of you. This starship can travel through space-time star fields. It can save all of you a lot of time. As he spoke, his gaze was fixed on Yi Xian. Obviously, this starship was prepared for Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, Thank you. Xiao Lan smiled and said, You're too courteous. You're too polite. With that, he cupped his fists. Everyone take care. Yi Xian nodded, and the four of them boarded the starship. It started up and disappeared into the depths of space. Xiao Lan looked at the distant end of the starry sky and said softly, His family is so invincible, yet he still has to work hard. What reason does he have not to work hard? At the end of the starry sky, Yi Xian stood on the starship. He was reading an ancient book, and he was engrossed in it. At this moment, a voice came from the side. What are you reading? Yi Xian turned to look. The person who had come was Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu wore a light purple dress that reached the ground. There was a white ribbon tied around her waist, which made her slender figure even more graceful. Her facial features were exquisite, and her voice was soft like a spring breeze. Her expression was gentle, and with her large, watery eyes, she was truly a rare beauty. Yi Xian smiled. Just as he was about to speak, Xiao Yu suddenly glanced at the ancient book in Yi Xian's hand. She blinked and said, Romance history? Yi Xian nodded. That's right. Xiao Yu smiled slightly. You like to read love books? Yi Xian smiled and said, This is not an ordinary love book. Within love, there is a criticism of the world. As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. He glanced at the surroundings and changed the topic. This starry sky is very beautiful. Xiao Yu nodded slightly. Indeed. As she spoke, she changed the topic. Young Master Yi, do you have a good relationship with the Celestial Treasure Pavilion? Yi Xian smiled and said, So Miss Xiao is here to inquire about me. Xiao Yu blinked and maintained her smile. Young Master Yi, you don't mind, right? Yi Xian smiled lightly. It's just as Miss Xiao thought. My relationship with the Celestial Treasure Pavilion is indeed not bad. However, I'm not one of them. Xiao Yu smiled and said, Someone who can make President Xiao Lan treat him so politely is definitely not an ordinary person. Yi Xian smiled slightly. I'm just an ordinary person who likes to read. He felt that it was better to speak less of the truth. In any case, no one would believe him even if he said it, and he would be suspected of being pretentious. Keep a low profile. Xiao Yu glanced at Yi Xian and said, Young Master Yi, Shall we join forces? Join forces? Yi Xian's brows slightly furrowed. What do you mean? Xiao Yu smiled. Zhu Fan and Qin Yu have already joined forces. Moreover, their clans are originally related. So, I feel that we can join forces as well. Yi Xian turned his head to look. In the distance, Zhu Fan and Qin Yu stood on one side. Both of them were meditating and seemed to be cultivating. However, he knew that both of them were definitely paying attention to this side. As if he thought of something, Yi Xian frowned deeply. If the two of them didn't join forces, then Xiao Yu would definitely join forces when she came to look for him. Moreover, this woman was talking and laughing with him just now. When he thought of this, Yi Xian turned his head to look at Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu blinked her eyes. Her gaze was clear and she had an innocent expression on her face. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. How could he believe that Xiao Yu was so innocent? Those who were sent to fight for the Dao God's ruins would definitely be determined in terms of strength or intelligence. This woman wanted to use him. Scheming? Yi Xian smiled. Miss Xiao, I'm an honest person. I won't beat around the bush. I'll just say what I want to say. To be honest, do you think it's appropriate for us to start messing with each other before we even reach the Dao God's ruins? Xiao Yu looked at Yi Xian with a smile still on her face. Yi Xian continued, I know that once we reach the Dao God's ruins, if we discover something good, the four of us will definitely fight for it. However, we haven't reached the Dao God's ruins yet, right? Moreover, are you sure that the Dao God's ruins are safe? What if there's danger inside? The smile on Xiao Yu's face gradually disappeared. Yi Xian continued, I'll say it again. I feel that the four of us should join forces now, at least for now. Xiao Yu looked at Yi Xian for a moment, then chuckled. Young Master Yi, you should read less books. This world is much more complicated than you think. If you read too many books, it's easy for your brain to have problems, which is to become pedantic. With that, she turned around and left. On the spot, Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. He thought to himself, silly girl, if I hadn't read more books, I would have killed the three of you right now. Following that, the starship fell into silence again. Yi Xian realized that he was still unable to unite these people. Actually, his true goal was to see if he could rope these people in, because he realized that these young people had all reached the demigod realm. They had reached the demigod realm at such a young age. Their futures were limitless. However, he realized that this idea of his might not work. These people were all top-notch monstrous geniuses nurtured by their respective clans. They were not that easy to fool. They were silent the entire way. 3 days later, the starship stopped. They're here. Yi Xian looked into the distance. In the starry sky not far away, there was a ball of black mist floating there, and within the black mist was the Dao God's ruins. At this moment, Xiao Yu stood up and looked at the ball of black mist. Yi Xian was just about to speak when Zhu Fan and Qin Yu suddenly vanished on the spot, and in the next moment, they'd entered the ball of black mist. Xiao Yu glanced at Yi Xian. See that? They've joined forces. Yi Xian smiled. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Xiao Yu glanced at Yi Xian in the distance, and then she vanished on the spot as well. After a short moment, Yi Xian arrived at a mountain range, and there was an enormous floating palace in the depths of the mountain range. The surroundings of the palace were surrounded by a forest of mountains that towered into the clouds. This place had experienced countless years, and the entire mountain range was filled with an ancient aura. The trees in the surroundings even blotted out the sky, and they carried a ghastly and oppressive aura. Yi Xian and Xiao Yu arrived before the hall. Qin Yu and Zhu Fan didn't enter the hall, and they stood before the hall that was covered in weeds. Meanwhile, Zhu Fan and Qin Yu suddenly turned around to look at Yi Xian, and then Zhu Fan spoke abruptly, I never expected that you would really come. Yi Xian smiled, What? Zhu Fan grinned. We discussed earlier that the fewer people that know about the Dao God ruins, the better. Yi Xian frowned slightly. All of you intend to kill me? Zhu Fan gazed at Yi Xian. Yes. A terrifying aura suddenly locked onto Yi Xian, and it belonged to Xiaoyu. Obviously, the three of them had joined forces a long time ago. Xiaoyu gazed at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Do you know why we should kill you first?" Yi Xian shook his head. Xiaoyu grinned. "Because you look like an idiot when you're studying." Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Zhu Fan glanced at the surroundings and said, "Do you know why we're making a move here? Have you noticed? There's a formation here that prevents all divine sense from entering. In other words, all divine sense from the outside world can't reach here. Once we kill you, we can push the blame of your death onto the Dao God realm." "Perfect." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "I originally wanted to be more sincere and lead all of you to a win-win situation. But now it would seem like..." As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed. "Xiaoyu are ridiculed. A win-win situation? You're really terrifyingly pedantic." "No, it's not terrifyingly stupid. There's actually someone as naive as you in this world." "How laughable." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Do you know why I didn't join forces with you?" Xiaoyu frowned slightly and was about to speak. Meanwhile, Yi Xian pressed his fingers together and sliced lightly. Without any warning, Zhu Fan's head flew into the air while blood sprayed out like a fountain. It was an instant kill. Xiaoyu and Qin Yu's expressions instantly changed violently. Yi Xian grinned. "Because all of you are no different than ants before me." As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. "Sorry, I acted cool again." Both of them were speechless. P.S. Seeking monthly votes. Just one will do. Chapter 2340. At this moment, Xiaoyu and Qin Yu were completely dumbfounded. Instant kill? Yi Xian actually killed a demigod realm expert in an instant? How is this possible? Both of them couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. After all, even an ancient god realm expert might not be able to kill a demigod realm expert in an instant. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "What are you still standing there for? Why aren't you attacking?" Qin Yu took a deep look at Yi Xian. "I'm from the Qin clan of Boundary Mountain." Yi Xian suddenly slashed with his sword. Qin Yu's head flew off before he could finish speaking. Instant kill. Moreover, it was a complete annihilation that didn't even give him a chance to reincarnate. Yi Xian shook his head. "I hate people who use their backers when they can't win." He paused for a moment and continued, "What I mean is, I hate it when others use their backers, but I don't hate it when I use mine." Qin Yu. In the distance, Xiaoyu's face turned pale, and she looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. "You?" Yi Xian looked at Xiaoyu. "What about me?" Xiaoyu's voice trembled. "Why are you so strong? Aren't you bullying the weak?" "Bullying the weak?" Yi Xian laughed. He'd always been bullied by others, and he'd never imagined that he would one day be able to bully others. Xiaoyu suddenly said, "I surrender." Yi Xian shook his head. "I refuse." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed with his sword. Xiaoyu's head flew off and vanished. She was completely annihilated. Yi Xian chuckled lightly, and then he opened his palm, and 3 spatial rings slowly floated into his hand. They were the spatial rings of these 3 people. But very quickly, his face sank completely, because he noticed that there were less than 100,000 universe veins in these 3 spatial rings. So few? Yi Xian frowned. Obviously, these 3 people hadn't chosen to bring more universe veins and divine items before coming here. It was probably a precaution. Yi Xian was speechless. Right now, he was really poor. Previously, he had a total of 220 million Ian veins. After giving Su Mu 50 million, he used the sword skill and broke through and spent another 100 million. Right now, he had less than 70 million Ian veins left. Are there many? In fact, it wasn't much. This was because he still needed many more Ian veins in the future. Moreover, he still needed to nurture the experts of Guanxian Academy. Therefore, 70 million Ian veins was not a lot at all. He was a little poor. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice, then turned around and walked towards the main hall. Right now, he only hoped that he could gain a bit more from this mystic realm. When Yi Xian walked to the entrance of the hall, he seemed to think of something. He looked at Daoist and asked, "Brother Bai, is it dangerous inside?" He was really scared. Handsome for only 3 days. Even though his current strength was extremely strong, and it was comparable to an ancient god realm expert, he still had to be careful because he might be tricked. Daoist did not respond. Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, "Brother Bai? Were you beaten by Qing or again?" Daoist, Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Daoist suddenly said, "I'm really busy, Yi Xian." Yi Xian didn't pester Daoist anymore. He gently pushed the door open. As soon as the door opened, an ancient aura rushed out. Yi Xian frowned slightly. His mind stirred, and the sword will surrounded him to protect him. Yi Xian walked into the hall. The entire ground was empty. Not far in front of him, there was a praying mat. On the praying mat, an old man sat cross-legged. The old man wore a loose black robe, and his long hair was casually draped behind him. Yi Xian immediately bowed deeply. "Junior Yi Xian greets Senior." There was no response. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "Senior Daoishan? I'm with Qin Guan." Qin Guan. At this moment, the old man suddenly slowly raised his head. He looked at Yi Xian and slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were cloudy, but gradually became clear. The old man looked at Yi Xian. "Miss Qin Guan?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man sized up Yi Xian. After a moment, he smiled slightly. "Very good." Yi Xian bowed slightly. "Thank you for your praise, Senior." The old man said, "You're here for my inheritance." Yi Xian nodded. Daoishan was silent. Yi Xian said seriously, "Senior, I think I'm very suitable." The old man smiled. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "Can I tell the truth?" The old man nodded. Yi Xian said seriously, "Because Senior won't meet anyone more outstanding than me." The old man was stunned. After a moment, he hesitated and said, "Are all young people nowadays so immodest?" Yi Xian was speechless. The old man suddenly smiled. "You're really not bad. However, you're a swordsman, right?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man shook his head. "Your Dao has been established. You're not suitable for my inheritance." Yi Xian was silent. He had comprehended the sword Dao of the human world. As the old man said, it was very difficult to inherit someone else's Dao since he had his own Dao. The old man sighed, and a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. In fact, Yi Xian was indeed not bad and met his requirements. However, Yi Xian was a swordsman, and a swordsman was not suitable for his inheritance. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Senior, this is simple. Give me your inheritance, and I'll find you an outstanding genius, a super genius." The old man was stunned. Yi Xian smiled. "What do you think?" The old man hesitated. Yi Xian smiled. "Even if Senior doesn't believe me, you should believe Miss Qin Guan, right?" "Qin Guan." The old man smiled. "Do you have a candidate in mind?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes, she won't disgrace Senior." After a moment of silence, the old man glanced at his surroundings, and a complicated look flashed in his eyes. Saying so, he opened his palm, and a black scroll slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. "My inheritance is in this scroll." Yi Xian received the scroll and bowed. "I won't disappoint Senior." The old man smiled. "Take care." Saying so, his body gradually disappeared. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Senior, do you have anything else?" The old man blinked. "What?" Yi Xian directly said, "For example, a time vein god item." The old man shook his head. "There were hundreds of millions of time veins before, but Miss Qin Guan took them away." "Qin Guan." Yi Xian's expression froze. Yi Xian had to admit that he was completely speechless. Qin Guan took away all the treasures. Moreover, she even took this mystic realm out to sell. This woman was worthy of being called. This woman was indeed a businessman. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. At this moment, the old man suddenly smiled. "Little guy, you know Miss Qin Guan?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man said softly, She is an extraordinary person. If I had met her earlier, I might have had a different ending. Yi Xian frowned. Normally, with Senior's current strength, it should be very difficult for you to die. But Senior, saying so, he didn't continue. With Daoist here, he could see through the illusion. This old man was not a clone, but the main body. And now, the main body of the old man was disappearing bit by bit. No, it should be said that this old man had died a long time ago. He was just hanging on by a breath. After a moment of silence, the old man sighed. It's a long story. Saying so, he looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. You know, the stronger you are, the smaller you will feel compared to the vast universe. This feeling. Saying so, his expression became even more complicated. Yi Xian was silent. He could actually understand this Tao God because he also had this feeling. Previously, when he fought with his father, he wanted to see how far he was from his father and the others. However, he found that he still couldn't feel his father's true height. Even if he was very strong now. Most of the time, it was not the collapse of the realm, but everyone's vision and realm were limited. For example, a genius in a village might be the first in the village, but what if he went to the town? In the town, he might not be the first. But what if he went to the city? Then he might only be considered ordinary. In the whole country, he might not even be considered ordinary, but in the whole world, or even the whole universe. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. Most of the time, one's vision would be limited by one's knowledge. If he had not met Qing and his father, he would definitely think that the ancient god realm was very, very powerful. However, after meeting Qing and his father, he knew that the ancient god realm was considered powerful to him at the moment, but compared to the whole universe, it was still considered low. By this time, the Tao God had completely disappeared. The other party still did not explain how he ended up in such a situation. Yi Xian did not pursue the matter further because it was meaningless. Yi Xian glanced at the scroll in his hand and bowed slightly to the person in front of him. I won't let you down. Saying so, he looked around. The hall was empty, not a single treasure could be found. Yi Xian was speechless. Obviously, Qin Guan had taken everything away. What a bandit! Yi Xian did not linger, turning around and leaving. When Yi Xian left the main hall, 3 terrifying auras suddenly descended from the sky. In the next moment, these 3 auras locked onto him. Yi Xian looked into the distance and saw 3 old men standing not too far away. All 3 of them were ancient god realm experts. Yi Xian frowned. Only ancient god realm? Who are they looking down on? He naturally knew that these 3 people in front of him must be the family experts behind Xiao Yu and the others. At this time, the leading old man in the distance suddenly said, You killed them. Yi Xian nodded, Yes. The old man's expression suddenly became ferocious. Who gave you the dog? At this point, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and in the next moment, Yi Xian appeared behind the old man, a sword stuck in his throat. The 3 old men were dumbfounded. Behind the old man, Yi Xian's expression was calm. Ancient god? That's it? The 3 old men. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.